no more closed-door discussions regarding our continued occupation at City Hall. We reject the city's attempts to lure us into negotiations, and others will speak in this regard. Thank you.
Mr. Doug Haynes, our next speaker. After that is Dennis Henley. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Doug Haynes. I'm a board member of the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council, and I'm here today to explain why our neighborhood council voted unanimously last week to support a ban on marijuana dispensaries in Los Angeles, which hopefully will be coming back to this council in December. In East Hollywood, marijuana dispensaries are not collectives operated by caregivers. They're basically marijuana stores run by drug dealers who are in it strictly for the huge profits. Our background checks on a number of these owners have turned up criminal histories of assaults, fraud, and prison time. Also, the patrons of these gated storefronts are primarily 18 to 25-year-old healthy males, including many gang members, some of whom are later seen reselling the marijuana to our school children. Many of the pot shops aren't even handicap or accessible. The police have repeatedly emphasized to us that they want to shut down these criminal operations, but they can't because this city council refuses to give LAPD the clear authority it needs to do so. We therefore consider a ban to be the only realistic option left to us, yet those in the council who oppose it have offered no viable alternative to address the problems that we face on a daily basis. Advocates of marijuana dispensaries speak often about the suffering that will result if LA enacts a ban, but such claims are unrealistic. LAPD doesn't have the manpower to shut down the hundreds of dispensaries currently operating throughout LA, and a ban will merely give our police the authority they need to put the most blatant drug dealers out of business. As our neighborhood council sees it, our community is the victim of all of this, and the people who are truly suffering are our neighbors who suddenly find marijuana storefronts opening next to our homes, schools, and businesses. All we ask is that this city council finally do its job by shutting down these illegal dispensaries and getting these criminals out of our community. And I would hope when this issue comes up, and I know everyone is distracted by other matters before them, that everyone will really pay attention to this matter because it really does impact us in a severe way. And we're very grateful to Councilman Weezer for the efforts he's made on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Dennis Henley is our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Dennis Henley. I'm a filmmaker and a small business owner in Los Angeles. I just wanted to draw the City Council's attention to the case of the Free Speech 8. This is case number 0CA01276. It is basically 8 individuals who are being prosecuted by the city for exercising their free speech rights through neighborhood demonstrations at UCLA vivisectors' houses. All activities that they're being charged with, which include focus picketing, disturbing the peace, and use of amplified devices, occurred in front of Los Angeles Police Department or UCLA Police Department officers. These activities were deemed as legal when they occurred. Later, at the request of UCLA interests, the City Attorney's Office went back and reviewed tapes of these activists' demonstrations and came up with these charges, even though they have been deemed as legal by the police on the scene. And they're bringing these charges. This case begins on Monday at 8:30 a.m. And I would just like to urge the City Council members and anybody else who's interested in this case and interested in the rights of free speech in Los Angeles not being infringed by interests from UCLA who are trying to push the City Attorney's Office to prosecute these individuals because they're making it uncomfortable for vivisectors there to do their business, to Google Free Speech 8 or to look at case number 0CA01276 and come support the Free Speech 8 at 8:30 on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pete Totham is our next speaker. After Mr. Totham will be Jared, I believe it's Forfo. Excuse me if I didn't read that correctly. Good morning.
So this is this week's issue of Time magazine. Pictures of protests at Tahrir Square. There's a 2-page spread here showing the pepper spray incident at UC Davis. There's also an article about China and the United States. It points out that 33% of the Chinese economy goes to consumer spending. 78% of the U.S. economy goes to consumer spending. Now, why are we here? What's really going on here? Just pause for a second, okay? Look around you. Look at the people in the audience here. You're supposed to be elected representatives. You're supposed to listen to middle class and non-middle class people here in Los Angeles and come and engage. I've been out there with these folks 25 days. 1 out of 5 people in this city is unemployed. There's only one city council member here who has had the audacity, or the courage, has had the courage to come out there and talk to us, and that's Bill Rosendahl. Mr. Garcetti, Mr. Alarcon, you've been supportive, but you haven't come out to the General Assembly and spoken with us. You know, on October 12th, 13 of you passed a resolution unanimously. 3 of you abstained. Mr. Krikorian, Mr. Weezer, and Mr. Englander abstained. I want to ask why. But 13 of you approved of this Occupy LA presence. We're here to tell you that the city is in crisis. The unemployment problem is very real. I have talked to at least 20 people who have had their houses foreclosed upon them. People are suffering. Occupy LA has recaptured the public imagination in a way that the LA Times simply, can't do by doing the normal course of business, the status quo. We're here to work with you to provide a sounding board for the citizens of this city. Please support us. Please stand by your earlier words. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as one clarification, there is no abstention. If somebody's not recorded, it's because they're not here. But you cannot formally abstain in a vote of the City Council. Jared, was it Forfo? And excuse me if I got that right. And then Jeremy Roth Cushel. Did I get that right? My apologies if I didn't.
Jared Iorio.
Iorio, sorry.
Solidarity Park.
Gotcha.
All right. Mic check. Mic check. Para todos todo, para nosotros nada. For everyone everything, for us nothing. As a collective, Occupy Los Angeles would like to express their rejection of the City of Los Angeles' alleged proposal that we leave City Hall by November 28, 2011. In exchange for an apparently now rescinded offer of a 10,000 square foot building, farmland, and 100 SRO beds for the homeless. Occupy Los Angeles believes that as part of a global movement advocating direct participatory democracy and challenging economic and social injustices, our position is such that we cannot, in all good faith, accept further material benefit from City Hall at the taxpayers' expense without seriously compromising our beliefs. Our desire for global change and our commitment to our inherent human rights to free speech and assembly, protected in this country by First Amendment rights. The 1% should be paying for any services used by the Occupy movement, not the taxpayers.
Thank you. Jeremy Roth Cushel is next, and then C.J. Minster will follow. Good morning.
Good morning. Born and raised Los Angelino, former member of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. In the spirit of inclusivity and transparency, which is so dear to our movement, Occupy Los Angeles extends an invitation to Mayor Villaraigosa and the City Council to attend our General Assemblies at the City Hall occupation. If he wishes to discuss these and other matters, in a direct, democratic, and horizontal way. Mayor Villaraigosa must speak out against the violent actions towards our brothers and sisters. Declare the actions of other cities to be unjust. And stand before us equally at the General Assembly. Occupy Los Angeles believes that until this happens, we should have no more closed-door discussions regarding our continuing occupation of City Hall. The City Council, in line with government in general, is an authority which is more accountable to developers and corporations than the public. The very act of the Los Angeles City Council requesting the physical removal of Los Angeles occupiers without redressing the grievances which were specifically referenced.
Thank you. If you don't mind, we have actually rules of decorum that no matter who is speaking, we have to try to enforce. So if you guys don't mind, we can line up speakers in a single file line, or if folks want to speak from the pews themselves. But if we can make sure that people's views aren't blocked, that would be great if we can make sure those get enforced. CJ Minster is our next speaker, and then Joshua Taylor will follow. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. The very act of the Los Angeles City Council requesting the physical removal of Los Angeles occupiers without redressing the grievances which were specifically referenced in the inclusion of our adopted Declaration of the Occupation of New York City. And in the City Council's First Amendment rights occupy Los Angeles. Responsible banking resolution is in effect supporting the removal of all occupations from public space by any means. We cannot negotiate with such an institution without undermining our sister occupations across the globe who are suffering from oppressive force and attacks upon their inherent human rights to free speech and assembly protected in this country under the First Amendment. We refer here to episodes in Oakland, Boston, New York, Portland, UC Davis and San Francisco, to name but a few. We refer to those further afield, in Tahrir Square in Egypt, in Madrid, Greece, London, and more. Tear gas, pepper spray, beatings, jail. Suppression and intimidation have been used as a coercive measure as silencing our movement.
Thank you.
And our desire
Joshua Taylor will be our next speaker. After that will be Esteban Gil.
We reject outright the city's attempt to lure us out
I think they aren't too sure.
the City Hall and into negotiations by offering us nebulous, non-transparent, and unconfirmed offers which fail to even begin to address our local grievances. We will continue to occupy this space in solidarity of our global movement until the forces of the few are forced to capitulate to the power of the people. When the following grievances have been addressed grievances which we have agreed upon as a movement through our General Assembly as advocating our cause and providing for the people of Los Angeles. We as the movement will be happy to initiate dialogue with the mayor and the Los Angeles City Council and offer space of 10,000 square feet would not have addressed these grievances. While these grievances listed below are localized,
I know.
we believe that they promote the underlying foundation of our principles, of our movement, which include, but are not limited to, providing for basic, fundamental, and inalienable human rights, such as shelter, food, and health care, freedom of choice from sexual orientation.
Thank you, sir. Esteban Gil is our next speaker. After that is Lori Pershaw.
Gender equality and education. And the right most paramount to a free and democratic society. The right to self-govern. Detailed demands which encompass our greater worldview will be released at a later date by our Demands and Objectives Committee through the General Assembly. Grievances not addressed. A moratorium on all foreclosures in the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles to divest from all major banks and money to be removed from politics. 2, a citywide effort undertaken to solve the homelessness problem, which has led to 18,000 homeless people sleeping on Skid Row every night. Rehabilitation and housing must be provided for all homeless people. South Central Farm to be returned to the same LA community from which it was taken, and all other vacant and distressed land to be open for community use, and money to the tune of $1 million taken from Skid Row and given to a multi-million-dollar NFL firm to be returned to Skid Row.
Thank you, Lori Pershaw. Our next speaker. After that is Michael Lasley.
4.
If you don't mind just moving the microphone down a little, then we can hear you a little better. Thank you.
4. Los Angeles to be declared a sanctuary city. For the undocumented. Deportations to be discontinued. And cooperation with immigration authorities. Be ended. Including the turning in of arrestees' names to immigration authorities. 5. All forms of weaponry. Used by multiple law enforcement officials. Including but not limited to. Rubber bullets. Pepper spray. Verbal abuse. Arrest, foam batons. Tear gas. Long-range acoustic devices. And more. Are not to be used. On those exercising. Their First Amendment rights. To petition our government. For redress of grievances. We do not accept interference. With the freedom of the press. and the public to document police actions in public spaces. We will not tolerate brutality. 6. We assert our right to an open plaza on the south side of City Hall for people to peacefully assemble, voice grievances, speak freely, hold General Assembly, and come to people's consensus 24 hours a day if needed.
Michael Lasley is next. After that is Ryan Rice.
7. The City of Los Angeles to pressure the state to start a convention as provided for in the Constitution to remove corporate personhood and money from politics at a national level. 8. The City of Los Angeles to begin dialogue at the state and federal level on the issues of student debt and tuition hikes. 9. No cutbacks in the city services or a tax on the wages, work conditions and pensions of city employees. 10. A world-class transit system which addresses our debilitating traffic problem and restores the quality of life in Los Angeles. We conclude as a General Assembly by hereby renaming City Hall Park Solidarity Park.
Thank you. Ryan Rice is our next speaker. Okay. Pass Eddie Betts. Would you like to come forward? Eddie Betts.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Thank you. I believe that with the longevity of our movement, we have already succeeded in our experiment with liberated space. We have used this space to hold a social forum to address our grievances and our demands. And yeah, it's extremely unconstitutional to limit that, to limit our freedom of speech by not having a place, because we haven't had a place to address our grievances. We haven't had this in a really long time. We haven't had a place to hold this social forum. We are giving that to people. We are giving that to the community. And I feel that by shutting us down, by shutting all these occupations down, you're not addressing any of our grievances. So that is all.
Thank you. Our next speaker, I'm sorry we have to go with the cards that are here, Mr. Neubauer. Mike Oren is our next speaker. I'm sorry, Mr. Neubauer, we can only do one card per speaker, sir. Sorry, sir. We can't do. We appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Mike Oren is our next speaker. Thank you, Mike Oren. Would you like to speak? If not, Matt Dowd then is our next speaker. Mr. Oren, and then Mr. Dowd. Good morning.
I just received a message, City Council, and the mayor, wherever he is, that over 3,000 people have signed a petition not to evict thus far. That number will probably grow in the next couple hours. Double or triple, maybe quadruple. This movement is worldwide, and it's focused on Los Angeles. Yes, I just want to make one comment about what was printed in the Bloomberg News yesterday, newspaper in New York City. Remember the TARP money that bailed out the banks? $700 billion? The real figure was $7.77 trillion. Now that's out and out theft. And somebody needs to be prosecuted and investigated, if not whole administrations, about the theft in this country. I'm ashamed to be an American today, hearing that kind of news. I am ashamed that the people would let that go on. The politicians, I'm ashamed of them. I'm ashamed of corporate leaders. I'm ashamed of union leaders. And I was a union member. I'm a retired union bartender from Las Vegas. I'm not ashamed of the American people, though. I have faith in them. We started something really special here in Los Angeles. And I feel it's a spiritual movement also. It's for the people, by the people, with God Almighty's help. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Dowd is our next speaker. After that, we'll go Van Nuys, and Donna Pearman will follow Mr. Dowd. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. The clock's ticking. It's pretty much 30 days till Herb Wesson takes over as council president. Let me tell you about Norse versus the city of Santa Cruz, where the Ninth Circuit remanded that guy back to the district court so he could get damages against individual council members for interfering with his First Amendment rights at the podium or in the city council. Here's what they say. The councilman got up and he said, "Oh, it's against the dignity of this body and the decorum of this body." So I hope Dummy LeBong is listening, because he's the biggest
Sir, if you will
offender.
refrain
No,
from
no,
personal
no, no,
comments.
no. This is my
Sir,
time.
it is limited by the rules of decorum here. If you'll refrain from personal comments and please express your opinions. Thank you.
See, that's exactly the thing you're getting in trouble for, and that's why there's attorneys, and that's why you've got 500 attorneys or more, and you had to go and get outside attorneys to fight this now. So you're relying on this attorney here, and he can't even handle the case. So you should read Norse, we're going to get into this because, see, here it is, here it is in the Ninth Circuit. I'm reading from the Ninth Circuit. The city officials are not entitled to absolute immunity. You're only immune for legislative, not this kind of bullshit you're pulling here. So let me tell you something. We're going to the Ninth Circuit. They don't give a fuck about your
Sir, if you
decorum.
could please refrain from that language while you have the... We'll pause your timer, but if you have the right to say this... Sir, if you continue to be disruptive right now... Sir, your time is over. We'll next go to Donna Pearman and Van Nuys.
Yeah. Is he done? Okay.
He is, Donna. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'm Donna Pearman from Van Nuys. Anyway, I really think that Mr. Garcetti and City Council, you have put yourself in this position by giving them carte blanche time to be able, as long as you need to, type of idea that the Occupy people could stay there for as long as they want to. And that was a big mistake. The only problem is... Yeah, you're the corrupt ones. You should have gave a timeline on how long they can stay and how they can do their grievances. Yeah, you should help them. And I want to talk to the Occupy people. I think that you're missing the point. Staying over there and occupying over there, a lot of your messages are not being heard. I think you should voluntarily leave the City Hall and go over to the corporations, go over to the banks, and start protesting over there. If where you're against to is the banks and is the corporations, why are you at the City Hall lawn? Why don't you go over there and walk over there and start protesting, and let people know exactly what you're protesting for, and let's come in with
Sir, if you could please sit down so we can block everybody.
and let's go and and have realistic expectations, the things that can be done, and stop this blackmail. If you don't do all these unrealistic expectations, then we'll stay forever. And so let's not do that. Let's go over to the banks and let's come up with realistic expectations and solutions. Let's be adults, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pearman. Miriam Fogler will follow, also in Van Nuys, then Rudy Castro back here in Council Chambers. Good morning, Ms. Fogler.
Well, the real essence of the problem is that it's costing the city money, and I thought you were after the corporations and banks. The taxpayers are on the hook for this, and you're staying on that lawn. I want you to think about it in your souls, okay? How we can help our system make it better, to make it serve us better. I know you have a very good cause, and I know she said something maybe a little you didn't understand, but you need to understand is that it's costing the city with those police being there, monitoring you people who don't follow the laws there. You know, I don't know what's going on there. I'm not down there, but I understand what you're trying to get to, and there's good points that you have, and I really would like you to put some things into good practice and not make the taxpayers have to foot this bill. I think this is I'm not having the taxpayer pay for my First Amendment right here to speak. I'm paying for myself. We should be all self-sufficient and take care of ourselves. What happened to individual responsibility in your group? Why can't you people just get some money together, pay pay for the cost here, and find a decent location, rent a place? I'm sure that the city will be glad to help you find such a place. You can pay for the rent. I'm sure that you can get donations from people. The Lawyers Guild certainly has a lot of money. He can go file an injunction. He sure got a lot of money, folks. I think the lawyers are taking advantage of you, and you're good people. And I don't think it's right that the lawyers should be getting into this and telling you what you need to do. I think that you're coming out and speaking out. I appreciate you coming down here and being here. But we need to unite, and you need to do it the way that it doesn't hurt the middle-class taxpayers, okay? You're making people pay for this, and we need to do it another way, okay? Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Ms. Fogler. Rudy Castro is our next speaker. After that is Albia Miller.
Yes,
good morning.
Hi. My time. Thank you. I also just want to repeat some of what we stated in our statement that we made. Occupy Los Angeles believes that as a part of a global movement advocating direct participatory democracy and challenging economic and social injustices, our position is such that we cannot, in all good faith, accept further material benefit from City Hall at the taxpayers' expense without seriously compromising our beliefs, our desire for global change, and our commitment to our inherent human rights to free speech and assembly protected in this country by First Amendment rights. The 1% should be paying for any services used by the Occupy movement, not taxpayers. I'm here. We are the last standing big Occupy encampment. You guys may shut us down, but at some point, you cannot shut this movement down. It is not going to stop. We're continuing to grow. We will state our demands. We will have our general assemblies. We will not leave. In our proposal, we have listed our 10-point grievances, which we believe you should take very seriously. That's why, as a collective, we had 100% approval at our General Assembly. On Sunday, the day before the tried to disband our occupation, we had 1,000 people strong, that we had 100% consensus as well that night. We will not stop. We will continue to have our General Assembly. Tonight we'll have another one, 7:30 p.m. Come join us.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Albia Miller. After that is Jeanette Thompson. Good morning.
Good morning, City Council. Why do we need to reorganize the system of America? We need to march and occupy because resources and money is being taken from social services in cities and state governments. We don't understand the loss of jobs and the effects on families and individuals, and it will be much worse for all citizens if we continue to supply military bases and space programs. around the world while our cities and states are downsized, what will occur is no fire police or hospitals or schools to answer your call or teach your children. We have to develop jobs in America and use appropriate technology. We have to develop these jobs from renewable recycled sources, some bioalgae sources. Not every job is a good job. We do not need to import oil when we have oil substitutes. We do not need to build and destroy vegetation and animal habitat when there are hundreds of buildings in major cities that need restoration. The phony recession is using the no money mantra to deforest, steal habitat, destroy wetlands so they can gobble trees, land, minerals, oil. That is why Occupy Oakland is asking, give jobs restoring and open already built structures for whatever a tenant can afford. Zero down, zero deposit, but there won't be empty buildings. As a city whose block grants and public services are being constantly downsized, I would think you would wish to bring the Occupy movement representatives to the table for their ideas and suggestions. Many members of Occupy can help the city fund your committee needs for antiquated infrastructure and educational and library upsizing. Please vote for restoration and connective of the wastewater treatment infrastructure you're voting on today, Honeywell. We need to decrease this city's exporting of financing.
I'm sorry, ma'am. That's time. Thank you. Jeanette Thompson is our next speaker. Thank you, ma'am. Jeanette Thompson is our next speaker. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here to represent myself regarding property. I'm kind of late on this activist thing, and I'm very happy and proud to be here for whoever has, can remember me from the past. I believe that there are certain people that are activating because of people wanting to keep their properties and be able to go in on their properties, you know, do the things that they want to do on their property. I am being forced off of my property for no reason. They know I'm the owner of properties, and there's people that's just telling me, no, you can't get this, you can't do this, and you can't do that. And I'm like looking at them and wondering, why are you telling me I can't do something on my own property? And when I have papers or whatever, or if I had papers, they still try to come in your house and steal it and all that. So I'm still learning how to represent myself. I don't have a lawyer or anything. Let me see. So I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm here. My name is Jeanette Thompson, and I do need a lawyer, and I do want to represent the people here. I don't want to see anyone go to jail for anything, or, you know. So.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. LaBonge.
The CLA at the ropes assist her get where she lives, so if she has a city problem, we could possibly help.
Okay.
Want to come around to the ropes?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. And Mr. Rosendahl, that was our last public comment speaker. Wanted to briefly respond. Just under the State Brown Act, folks, I'm sure that people would like to engage in longer discussion, but under state law, if something has not been agendized on the formal agenda, we can only speak briefly to the item that is before us. We can speak personally to people, but in terms of in an open forum as part of our official city business. But Mr. Rosendahl wanted to briefly
Thank you for that. And I know the city attorney will be looking and listening to what I have to say. I did sit with one of the occupiers, Cheryl, who was one of the earlier speakers, like you had suggested, meeting with folks offline. And frankly, colleagues, it's about the process we're in and where is this heading. If one wants to be arrested, that is a civil rights, human rights expression, and that's fine. And I said to Cheryl, but don't resist the arrest, because then we could find ourselves in issues that make no sense for any of us. We agree 100% with the 99%. We do. Most of us do. For sure, I do. We will be forming a council committee that will take these issues to every level of government to affect social change. That is our plan. And the last comment I want to make is we're not like the Arab countries that have no democratic redress apparatus. We do. This committee, Mr. President, can take these issues to Washington, to Sacramento, and to other locations. And we will focus on it. And I pledge we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, sir, if we can have order in the chambers. That'll be the last warning. Thank you. Sir? If you need to continue to disrupt the meeting, we're going to have to ask you to leave, sir. There we have the end of that. We can go to items that are called special. We'll start with our commission appointments. And I'm sorry, sir, if we please ask this gentleman to leave the chambers. We need to conduct the meeting. Thank you, sir. We have item number 3, the commission appointment. If we can ask the number 3 come forward. And that is item for the mayor's appointment of Ms. Nicole Duckett to the board of the Los Angeles Convention Center. And Mr. Labange is our first speaker as the chair of our TCT committee to introduce
we have
our nominee.
a great addition to the city commission for our convention center. Ms. Duckett right here. I'd like you to tell us a little about yourself. You could sit right down right there, relax. Everybody can let the air go a little and address the council president on your passion for how you could see your role in serving the city of Los Angeles. A great attorney, passionate representative. Please, Ms. Duckett.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Good morning, Mr. Garcia, and hello to the rest of the council who I haven't met yet. I have met Mr. Rosendahl, of course. As Mr. Labange pointed out, I am extremely passionate about the city of Los Angeles. My family has been serving LA for 3 generations. My grandmother was the first African American and female social worker for the county of Los Angeles. My mother's been a speech pathologist for LA County since 1972. My grandfather worked for the city. My uncle worked for the city. My parents met at UCLA, and that's also where I went to law school. So as soon as an opportunity to serve the city in a much bigger capacity arose, of course, I jumped on it. So I'm very excited about this possibility. As Mr. Labange mentioned, I'm an attorney here in Los Angeles. I went to Georgetown undergrad, and then I went to UCLA for law school, and I have no doubt that a lot of the business skills that I've developed as being a business attorney will help me in this position. And I know it's a very exciting time for the convention center. There's a lot going on with the potential of Farmers Field and definitely the expansion and the modernization. So I'm excited to hit the ground running and get very involved.
So, members, I recommend an aye vote, and it's very exciting because she's focused both on truly the convention center operation and that expansion, as well as if and when an additional arena would come. I ask for an aye vote. Thank you, Ms. Duckett.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Rosendahl.
Let me ask you this. You've been following the AEG discussion. You know that we as a city would love to see the convention center expanded, become number 5 in capacity. We also would like to see a sports facility that would have multi-purposes. So we're moving in that direction. We do have issues about traffic and how Measure R will create the mass transit that is necessary. And some of us also have issues about a sign district and potential revenue stream for the city. I'm just curious where you are in your understanding of the AEG issue and how you see yourself interacting with it.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. With respect to the partnership with AEG and the potential of Farmers Field, as you point out, it's in the works. There's the MOU. There is still the issue of whether or not we get a team. I know Mr. Labange doesn't think we're going to get a team. I personally think we might, but this partnership, if it were to go forward and we were able to move forward with building the stadium, would be a huge advantage for Los Angeles, not just the convention center and the downtown area, but the city as a whole, because of the increase in revenue, filling up the hotels that we already have here, encouraging developers to possibly build more hotels. And I have no doubt that the city would be able to integrate whatever infrastructure they would have to deal with mass transit. There's a partnership with the Convention Center and LAX, and I think that partnership would have to come into play for some of that too, if there was this increase. But I think the most important thing is to sort of focus on moving forward with the stadium, with AEG, and then start taking on all of the issues that would come up to make that happen. I also think that if for some reason the stadium doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen exactly the way we think that it would, there still will be some type of modernization or expansion for the convention center. I know that the convention center hasn't been renovated really in any way since 1993, and in that sense sort of puts us at a disadvantage to some of the other convention centers. However, and I think I mentioned this at the TCT committee, I was actually really surprised to learn that the convention center is ranked as low as it is, because some of the other convention centers in the top 5, they don't bring in as much revenue as we do. They don't create jobs the way we do. So there's really no reason for us not to move up into that space.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that positive attitude. I like the fact that you're one of the rising lawyers, and you'll use your legal mind, analytical skills to help us through this. So
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for volunteering. Thank you, Mr.
sir.
President.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and take a vote and make this official. Again, thank you for offering yourself for service to the people of Los Angeles and the Convention Center. Let's go ahead and open the roll, Madam Clerk. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Approved. A round of applause for our Commissioner. Welcome aboard. Thank you very much. We go to the next Commission appointment, item number 21, and this is for Eduardo Tinoco and the Board of Library Commissioners, and Mr. Krikorian, as the chair of the committee, recognize you for your opening remarks for the nominee for the Library Commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Tinoco and discuss his vision for our library system and the skills that he brings to this task. And I'm very proud to strongly support his nomination, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote. But before we do that, Mr. Tinoco, why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about our library system and why you think that you're a good fit for this position and where you would like to see us go.
Thank you, sir. Again, my name is Ed Tinoco. I came into, I'm a librarian. I'm an actual librarian. I have a degree from San Jose State University. Cal State Northridge is my undergrad in English. I've been a librarian at USC for the past 8 years. The last year I've been in July I was appointed Associate Dean of Public Services, which in essence it encompasses 14 libraries that I oversee at the USC campus. I oversee the operations, the budgetary, the management of those 14 libraries within the USC campus. Prior to that, I worked as a business librarian in the Crocker Library for the Marshall School of Business. 4 years before that, I worked for Lehman Brothers as a business librarian, as a business researcher. So I've had 12 years of librarian work. My vision, in essence, right now for the city, I was honored to be asked to serve, and I certainly will work closely with Mr. Martin Gomez, the city librarian. I will understand the lingo of the librarian, so I understand the intricacies and what needs to be done as far as public services. Again, academic, public libraries are pretty parallel. In essence, in the public services, that's one of my biggest issues right now, and my biggest ways of coming and serve the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you. See no one else on the queue? Recommendation? Oh, I'm sorry. Public speakers. We have a couple public speakers. Matt Dowd, not in chambers. John Walsh. Matt Dowd, I'm sorry, there he is. Matt Dowd, then John Walsh. Go ahead, Mr. Dowd.
Yes, thank you. I'll take a minute on this. Congratulations, of course, and I hope you've got a long tenure, but unfortunately they're threatening to shut down all the libraries in the city. And here's why, because they blew all the money and all the budget's blown, and here's why I'm telling them to shut down all the libraries, because I'm in this First Amendment litigation with the city of LA. And it's fundamental litigation regarding what you can say here and what you can, and all the rulings encompass the Occupy people and what they can do, and it's all part of the complex First Amendment law that's out there. And you would expect young children to go to libraries and read about this kind of thing so they know what they can do when they get here. But this enemy, oh, we can't settle your case because we'll have to close down a library. Well, what's the point of having a library if you can't read about what we did?
Mr. Walsh, and then Mr. Cardenas.
John Walsh, blogging at Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org. Email us at hollywooddems@gmail.com, or Google us at Mickey's Pointed View, POMIKI. I've been using the Hollywood Library since the first time. When I visited as a tourist, I went to the Hollywood Library. That's how much I like it. It now serves as a homeless center. And that has do you know that libraries in Oakland are open to 9 or 10 or 11 p.m. and are used almost always by homeless people? The bathrooms are used by homeless people. We leave our mirrors in the Hollywood bathrooms. In the white sections of this town, the racists at the library, and you can check this out, have removed the mirrors from the library so the homeless won't go in there and shave and dress. That's in the white sections. In the minority sections, where I live in Hollywood, we have mirrors in our... You know, I don't mind people sleeping on the ground at the library. People are sleeping on the floor. The only thing I draw the line at was playing cards. When I saw 5 or 6 people playing cards, we stopped that. We have to live with the homeless, and since your homeless services don't work, they're vastly under, and you're about to create a few more hundred homeless. We need the libraries, and I want every library, Mr. Tinoco, to have a mirror in it, and not just in minority sections, because white people don't want minorities in white neighborhoods. You're a Mexican American. I want to see something. Hollywood, Day 2, LAPD versus LA Occupy standoff. Bye-bye.
Mr. Cardenas.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Tinoco, for your volunteering of your time, your public service to the families, especially the children of the city who use our library a lot. Certainly in my neighborhood they do. I want to ask you a serious question. Do you know how to read?
Yes, sir. I can read both in English and Spanish.
Great. The reason why I asked you that question, it's a serious question, because that's exactly why my parents came to this country, is to make sure that their children know how to read. And we're very fortunate that out of 11 of us, the ones who chose to go to college, we went to college and got master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, doctorate degrees, and we grew up in a poor community or a challenged community like Pacoima. But we're very fortunate that we were able to go to our public library and study. We were able to have those kinds of public paid opportunities for us to advance and to be able to better ourselves, and then to be able to compete and to grow in this country. So I just wanted to make the point that I really do appreciate the volunteerism of your time, and I cannot emphasize enough how important our public libraries are. And I want to thank the voters for passing the initiative to make sure that we can rebuild our libraries and increase the hours to make it as accessible as possible. So my next question to you is this. How do you feel about us having a part-time library system like we had to go to most recently versus a more full-time library system where we have robust hours and people can go there on the weekends and weeknights and during the day, et cetera, and participate in our libraries?
Well, it's going to take me some time to really understand the intricacies of how it works. Obviously, I was nominated back in November, so I'm trying to, back in October, trying to get an understanding. I would certainly work closely with the city librarian and the rest of the commissioners to see what the process is or what can be done. Again, yes, I read both English and Spanish. Spanish is my first language, actually. So yes, my parents, the same way. My father was a chef. My mother was a housewife. And there's importance of how to better yourself and educate. That's an important aspect of my part within.
Yeah, well, thank you very, very much, and I hope that we do make the kind of progress that we'd like to see with our library system and bring it back to a much more robust open hours system versus the part-time system that we, as policymakers, had to go to. So thank you once again for your service, and I really appreciate you putting in the time and making sure that we do have a system that's responsible and that our children can take advantage of, and our families as well. Thank you.
Mr. Labonge.
Congratulations, Mr. Tinoco. First for Saturday night. I know your library was closed on Saturday night, but it was a little busy over there at 39th and Figueroa with some of those great student athletes.
Yes, sir.
But a library in every neighborhood. And did you grow up in Los Angeles?
I grew up in North Hollywood and Burbank.
North
yes, sir.
Hollywood. So the North Hollywood branch, the Amelia Earhart now, right there at Magnolia, your library. You remember the first book you read as a kid? I remember mine, which was Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel.
Well, in fifth grade, I read some of these books that Moonbeam Goes to Space. These little books that just for me to start learning how to. Again, fourth grade, fifth grade, I came here, and we started reading the basic studies. Yes.
Well, it has a lasting effect on the opportunity, and in every neighborhood in the city of Los Angeles is a library, and your position with the University of Southern California will further enhance it because we're very fortunate that USC, UCLA, Northridge, Cal State LA, Long Beach State, Cal State Dominguez Hills, as well as many private institutions, whether it's Occidental, Loyola Marymount, or Mount St. Mary's, et cetera, are here. And librarians are very important people because you're almost career counselors, as well as giving the opportunity for people to think and dream. So I just want to thank you for your service to the city of Los Angeles, and appreciate what you do now and what you're going to do in the future. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, it's now ready for a vote, and I'm sure your parents will be very proud of you before this body to get confirmed as a commissioner with all your other successes. So
Thanks, sir.
with that, colleagues, open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Congratulations, Commissioner. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 1, call special for cards.
Number 1, John Walsh. Number 1, sir. Mr. Walsh passes. Anyone on number 1? Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item, please.
Item 2, call special by Councilman Rosendahl.
Mr. Rosendahl, we have a card from Matt Dowd.
Thank you very much. I'd like to have Mike Arnold come up before Mike speaks so that we can save our time. Mike Arnold, come on up, and anybody else on this item number 2. And that'd be fine. Great. Public comment.
We'll hear it after. Okay. So, Mr. Dowd, you'll come after the... go ahead, sir, the center table.
Please get inside.
Mr. Dowd will follow the conversation. Go ahead.
Yes.
Mr. Dowd, you're going to speak after this presentation. After.
No, you can speak now.
Thank you.
I thought you said you wanted it after.
No, I just wanted him sitting there. That's all.
Go ahead then. Excuse me.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dowd.
Defer to the councilman. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Rosendahl. I'm going to take a couple of minutes on this one because it's important. But let me say, today is the bamboozle agenda of all time. If you look at it, today they're pushing through everything. And speaking of winter shelter programs, they're using the Occupy people as I can't even think of the word right now, but they're using that as a front to get through all these shady things in this agenda. But this is a good one. So I'm going to get back on the topic of this one. The winter shelter program, of course. You know, I wish we had these things all year round. We really need them. But in wintertime, especially, it gets dark early. The nights are long. There's a lot more crime able to be committed during the night hours. And we've got to get these people off the streets. So here's what we need to do is find this money out of the budget that I wish we had. It got squandered. But I hope Bernie Parks can find some money somewhere to get some more of these shelters up and running. And I see them at Venice Beach all the time. They come and drop them off there and pick them up. But I did notice now that it's winter that it really is getting dark and all those people are still waiting for the bus to come to pick them up. So thank you, City of Los Angeles.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much. Mike Arnold. Mike Arnold is the county guy, city guy, the LAHSA guy. Explain who you are and your title first, and I want to go through some questions.
Good morning, council members. I'm Mike Arnold. I'm the executive director of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. The Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, or LAHSA as we call it, is a joint powers authority that was created between the city and the county to address homelessness within the city and the county.
And on that note, colleagues, thanks to your support, on October the 17th, on the west side, we opened up a shelter, a 50-bed shelter. You all were able to work on $90,000 with the mayor's leadership as well, went through budget committee and was approved. Plus, I put another $20,000 in that I took from PATH, which is a group that are dealing with people living in cars and campers and transitioning them to housing. So we could open up the shelter on the 17th of October for the reasons that Venice Beach, as Mr. Dow mentioned, is a very serious situation of homelessness on the beach. Now, we've gone from 50 beds to 70 beds because the demand is great. Effective December 1st, in a couple of days, we will open up our winter shelter program that then expires March 15th. So 2 questions. The winter shelter program, are we on target in downtown and in the west side? And what kind of monies and how many beds will we have?
Yes, we're on target for opening the program December 1st at all 14 locations throughout LA City and County. The city funds 7 locations and 870 winter shelter beds. There are 2 locations on the west side, one which will be at the West LA Armory, which is where the current 70-bed program that the city is funding exists. The other is a 35-bed combination shelter, total of 81 beds. It's co-funded by the County of Los Angeles and Inglewood, but it will all cover the west side, including...
Whatever happened to our Culver City location, which was more convenient?
The Culver City location had some problems. We rent a number of these winter shelter locations from the National Guard. The National Guard has pulled out of Culver City, and as a result of pulling out, the facility sort of fell into a limbo where we didn't have access to it on a timely basis. We were concerned that if we waited for the city and the Armory, the State Armory, to come to agreement, that we wouldn't be able to open on time. So we found an alternative location. It's just a few miles away from there, and we are able to ensure that that 81-bed shelter will be opening on December 1st as well.
Okay, help me out on this. Ms. Perry, with her leadership, has had a shelter open 12 months out of the year. I want one on the west side. Venice Beach has become a spillover from Skid Row on some levels. Venice Beach on its own is a location where people come from all over the world, people with money and people without money. The homeless issue is out of control on the west side. We're trying to focus on it and deal with it. What are our abilities with the county and the city coming up with resources so that on March 15th I don't shut down a shelter, but give an opportunity for people to have a place to stay, same time the wraparound services, and the ultimate objective is permanent housing with supportive services, which we don't have the political will in Washington to put the kind of resources in place that we must have in place. We have a huge crisis here in Los Angeles. How do we go forward on the west side to have a shelter in the rest of the year, because it's as critical as it is in the winter?
Yes, and I agree that the west side has a significant shortage, actually, of all homeless services. In terms of shelter operations, we have basically one family shelter. It's in the city of Culver City. Santa Monica operates a small shelter, but other than that, there is no shelter availability on the west side. The key things for the operation of a shelter, obviously, you've got to have community support, you've got to have the money to run it, you've got to have a location, and you've got to have an operator. All of those are not insignificant challenges. Probably the biggest challenge for us at this point in time is resources. As you probably know, just hanging on to the resources that we have invested in homeless services and housing has become extremely challenging. We've been lucky in the sense that the federal allocation, the McKinney-Vento program, which is the Homeless Services Assistance Act, has been stably funded, but that means we don't have additional money for more resources. So I think our biggest challenge right now are the resources to enable those shelters to remain open.
Okay, I'd like you to report back to this council on February 1st with a strategy and options of how March 15 is not the shutdown on the west side, and what resources we'll have to need to keep it open, what our city and our county and its leaders should do. By February 1st, that gives us 6 weeks to get everybody focused and develop on it. And if we need the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate and the President and others in Washington to put more funding in place, I demand that. So I'd like a report with a strategy of how we can open up a shelter year-round on the west side that can impact the crisis I have on Venice Beach and in other locations in our city. Can I count on a report back February 1st with
Absolutely.
Options and strategies? Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. LeBon.
Yeah, just a question, because I heard that passion coming from you, Bill. What's happening out at the old soldiers' home, Sawtell, and all that land, and right there by Wilshire Boulevard and the 405? Is there any opportunities there?
If I could, in the dialogue sense, to Mr. Labange, that's a very good question. You might remember, Mr. Labange, that the federal government, with the VA property, has substantial land. And after World War II, there were places for homeless veterans. They tore down all that housing, and now they don't have enough housing on the VA property that could handle veterans. We have 8,000 to 10,000 homeless veterans. And those from these latest wars, they got real issues from combat. And people from Vietnam are still out there. I've seen them. But we're not getting enough federal support.
Let me ask you a question. Is there any connection would we find a way to build? Because it's sad for anybody to be on the streets. It's sad for those who served us to be on the streets. Is there any opportunity because land is the biggest challenge for Los Angeles. If we encourage the local congressional delegation to look at that for whether you get 500 units or whatever, that's a lot of space out there.
Passion is with you. I would like our members of the House of Representatives to assist us. We've done as much as we could on the west side.
Do we do it as much as we could? Could we build on that property somewhere where the theater, near the theater, not the historic theater?
There's a lot of vacant land there. Good point.
Okay. Just something to look at, because I think it's a discussion, because our biggest challenge, members, on any project, whether it's libraries, parks, or shelters, is land.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Thank you.
That. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Okay, so we want to take a vote on this matter?
Mr. President, this item is a discussion item, so no action is necessary.
All right, thank you very much. Next item, please.
Mr. President, there's a request to reconsider item number 1 and continue it to January 10th, 2012.
On the reconsideration, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, reconsidered. And then we want to schedule it for when?
Continue it to January 10th.
All right, that'll be the order. Without opposition. Next item, please.
Item 5, cause question by Councilman Rosendahl.
Mr. Rosendahl, number 5, and there's no cards.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I want to do with number 5 is refer it back to Mr. Krikorian's committee so that they can give us a full report in this report as to what facilities are engaged in this combination strategy. The report itself doesn't give us enough clarity. So this joint use agreement in the city, including, of course, I have an issue with Venice High School and its pool. I'd just like to see it fleshed out. I'd like to see them presented to your committee, Mr. Krikorian, so that you can actually understand what we're talking about, and we could all as a group vote on it.
It's a great suggestion. I welcome the opportunity.
Will you second that motion?
I will second it.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much.
Without objection, that will be sent back to committee. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And we'll, Mr. Labange, and then we'll hit public comment.
Goes back to committee, Mr. Krikorian. There was a previous issue on joint use and the effectiveness, and also that there's certain requirements. Many of us have built sports fields with city money combination with district money, and the condition of how that is operated. So it's really a citywide issue. It's not just the valley. So it could be real important to look at. Could we just amend it to look at it regionally? Because I think if it would make sense. Question to the good councilman of the 2nd District. Just if
yes.
I could ask you.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, thank you, Mr. Labange. I think the motion was directed towards the San Fernando Valley, but the report itself does actually encompass the the entire universe of joint use relationships. And I agree with Mr. Rosendahl. We would like that report to be even more fulsome, more detailed. I'd love to flesh it out in committee and explore all of those, the various permutations of it for every region of the city.
A friendly member regionally, because the district operates regionally. We operate regionally, so it may be an addition. Thank you. You got a little cold?
Thank you. A little bit.
All right.
All right. Without objection, there actually are no cards on that, so we'll send that back to committee. Item 5. Next item, please.
Councilman, for item number 6, Councilman Rosendahl asked to hold that item. An amending motion 6A has been circulated.
Okay. If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and move that. Okay. As amended, if we can open the roll on item 6A, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next, we have item number 8. Mr. Cardenas called special. Mr. Cardenas? That's all right. We'll call on you anyway.
Thank you very much. If we can have the CAO staff, the sanitation staff, and maybe even the city attorney who worked on this up at the table. Again, this is a matter of the wastewater control system replacement contract, and it went out to RFP. And now it's before the council as to whether or not we're going to take the staff recommendation or not. As usual, our options are vast and varied as to what we can do here on the council. Also, we had extensive discussions about this in the committee process. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to ask if the scoring process, when it came to the scoring process, how many individuals were on the scoring panels, actually scoring the bidders, and then what were their expertise or what was the mix of them?
Councilmember Cardenas, I'm Enrique Zaldivar, the Director of the Bureau of Sanitation. Seated with me here to my right is Bob Irvin, who's our Information Officer, Varouche Hopkins, Assistant General Manager, who oversaw the process from the executive level in sanitation. There were 12, and then to his left is Emilio with the CAO. The total number of employees that were involved in the evaluation were 12. 12
were they
members.
all with the sanitation department?
We had a mix of employees from sanitation as well as some from engineering and some from contract administration. So
Okay.
it was a mix.
So there are 12 people who work for the City of Los Angeles across 3 departments or 4 departments?
3 departments.
Across 3 departments that were scoring the bidders. And then at the end of the day, how many bidders were actually scored or finalized with a final score?
Varouche, why don't you please
Initially, we had 4 proposals that were submitted to the City of Los Angeles. After the initial evaluation, one proposer was eliminated, and 3 proposers moved in to second stage with a thorough review of the proposal, followed by our stage 3, which was the interview process. So 3 proposers moved to be finalists, and at the end of that process, they were ranked as number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Okay. And then so there were 3 actual bidders who actually got a final score. And of those final scores, there were various categories or components they were scored on?
Correct.
And one of the issues that seems to be of contention is the issue of price. What the bidders proposed as a price. Was the price black and white one number, or was it initial installation price? Was it long-term price as well for an overall score, or what was it?
Be happy to answer that. Overall, as you know, we had 6 criteria to measure, and that was total of 120 points, of which 20 points were allocated to the price. The RFP required the proposers to submit 2 proposals. One was a lump sum proposal, which had to do with the replacement of the existing system, and a unit price proposal that had to do with future, in order to protect the city from any price hikes of predatory in nature. The RFP also cited an exhibit that is the 10-year capital improvement program of Bureau of Sanitation, which entails all the projects that will be built within the next 10 years. As we know, this contract is 15 years. So by exercising a mathematical, not subjective, but very objective process, the 20 points which was allocated for pricing was divided approximately for 15 points for the lump sum proposal and 5 points approximately for future. In this process, all of the evaluation was done on a level playing field on the face value of what was submitted to the city. The 15 points for the lump sum was evaluated based on what the proposals were. At that stage, Emerson scored maximum 15 out of 15 points for their lump sum because they were the lowest lump sum provider. However, they scored the least.
Excuse me, actually, in case some of my colleagues have the table in front of them like I do, the breakdown was a perfect score of 14.4 in the lump sum category and a change order / unit price analysis / future costs of 5.6. So basically what you're saying is on the lump sum, Emerson scored a 14.4, which was a perfect.
Correct.
Right? Continue.
Yes. However, for the future pricing, which was determined by the exercise that we put them through, their costs came to be the highest. Therefore, they did not earn approximately 5 points for the future. On the contrary, Honeywell scored the least for the lump sum because they were the highest proposer, and however, their future cost was the least. Therefore, they scored maximum of 5 points, approximately 5 points for the future cost. Overall, proportional to the scoring, we evaluated as far as what is the cost of the ownership to the City of Los Angeles. Obviously, we do not want to be lowballed at the beginning of a contract on the changeover of existing system, and down the road, city to be taken to the cleaners for higher costs. Mm-hmm. This was anticipated from the get-go, and all the proposers were evaluated on the same level playing field with the initial value that they had submitted.
Okay, thank you. I'm running out of time, so I just want to make a couple of points, and I'll push my button again. But when it comes to who is the incumbent, who is actually running the system on behalf of the city right now, are one of these proposers the incumbent?
Emerson is.
Emerson is. So how long was this?
One plant only.
How long was this process? From the beginning of the RFP process, where it actually went out, where people could actually start the bidding, and then where we are at today. Approximately how many months or years did that take?
Bids were actually issued. RFP was issued in July 2009. So we're in
July of 2009.
Correct.
Okay, and we're now past July of 2011. Right. So it was over a 2-year process. So I would figure that if we just threw it all out and started over, whoever happens to be working with the city right now, they're like the default winner per se, at least for a period of time until we can actually go through an entire RFP process and then determine who's going to take over from there.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Cardenas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to ask my colleagues if we would allow public comment, at least 1 minute each. We have about 12 cards here. They made a trip to City Hall, and I think we should allow them the ability to speak. I'd like to call for public comment.
We had public comment in committee. We do have about, I think, 13 or 14 cards. If there's no objection, we'll take a minute each. All right, okay. Our first speaker is Samuel Unger, and then George Kiefer. Thank you. I know a minute is brief, but thank you all for trying to pack it in. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Members of the City Council, my name is Samuel Unger. I'm the Executive Officer of the California Regional Water Quality Control Board. We are the regulatory agency that oversees the operation and performance of the city sanitation system. Over the past 8 years, I've spoken to you several times about upgrades to the collection system, to the sanitation plants that were long overdue. The city undertook an upgrade of this collection system, and now with the impressive performance of the Bureau and their achievement is basically a reduction of spills from 2 per day by more than 90% throughout the city. This means these spills used to be on a daily basis, multiple spills on a daily basis that have now been eliminated. The other half of the system, though, is not just the collection system, it's the treatment systems, which are also in need of an upgrade. Our board is well familiar with collection system performance systems failures of control systems that have resulted in massive spills, not by the city's agency, but by other cities in our region. So I'm here today to support the upgrade of the control system for the city sanitation.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. George Kiefer is our next speaker. After that is Laura Jaime. Good morning.
Morning, council members. Good morning, Mr. President. My name is George Kiefer with Manette Phelps and Phillips, and we are counsel for Honeywell. On behalf of Honeywell, I want to thank you and I thank the process. Honeywell was unanimously selected by every single body that reviewed this issue. The 12-person staff person not only ranked them first on price, but on every other of the 5 categories. It was then protested in spaghetti-type protests thrown up by Emerson in an attempt to keep the contract going. Not one single point was proven in any case. 13 hours of hearings were held and forced by Emerson in the Public Works Board after the staff had seconded the recommendation by the 12-person, the unanimous recommendation by the 12-person committee. The Board of Public Works, after 13 hours of hearings, voted 5-0. It went to the Energy and Commerce Committee. It held hearings on both sides, heard the spaghetti protest by Emerson, the third-ranked bidder, voted 5-0 to support the staff recommendation. The CAO reviewed it and endorsed the staff recommendation. I ask you to vote for this contract. It's pretty simple.
Thank you. Laura Jaime is next. After that is Jessica Duboff. Good morning.
Good morning, City Council. I'm here to urge the City Council to please uphold the Arizona ban that we had initially when they came up with the SB 1070. It's very sad to hear that we had our first suicide because the DREAM Act didn't pass. And just to think and put yourselves in their shoes, to be in that mindset where you have to take your life because of these racist immigration laws, this broken immigration system. And I myself am a DREAM Act student, and to think and to just, you don't know how awful it feels to have and to hear that someone has actually gone that far to commit suicide because of these racist laws. And I know Honeywell is based in Arizona, and we should not, please do not give this contract to them. This is like putting money in their pocket. This is just fueling these more racist laws throughout the United States. We have seen Alabama going that same route, and please, please uphold the ban.
Thank you. Jessica Duboff is our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Duboff. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. With over 4 million people currently served, our aging wastewater automation system suffers from multiple weaknesses that require complete replacement. Modern infrastructure is key to our quality of life as businesses and residents. Following an extensive and thorough process of evaluation and appeal, Honeywell International was unanimously recommended by the Board of Public Works to upgrade the city's aging wastewater information and control systems. Honeywell employs 1,800 people in the region, and specifically, the automation division has more employees in California than Arizona. This contract would create even more jobs locally. Companies invited to invest time and money in an expensive, deliberative, and thorough process of selection need to have confidence in the results process. Unless that confidence is there, top companies will fail to propose in the future and will not get the best people for the job. Honeywell ranked the highest in all 6 RFO criteria categories and was deemed to be the best value and most qualified proposer. We urge the City Council to swiftly award the contract to Honeywell so that small businesses can start partnering with the company, creating jobs and proceeding with Los Angeles' environmental needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I have a card here without a name on it. It says somebody from Rangeview Avenue. Somebody strengthening our lives, Honeywell, but no first name. Sorry? Come on down. I have your card, Javier, down here as well, but
Oh, okay. That was.
this was just a blank one. Excuse me, it said Honeywell and strengthening our lives, but you want to go ahead, Javier? You can come forward.
Sorry, my voice is a little bad.
You and Mr. Krikorian.
Okay. My name is Javier Gonzalez. I'm here representing I see if I calm down, I can speak right. I'm here representing the Sound Strike, which is a group of musicians that have been actively organizing with the boycott. I've been involved with this process for a very long time. I want to urge you to vote no on the Honeywell contract because they are an Arizona-based company. I mean, just sitting in the room, I've been involved in this process since February. The first thing I was told before the public comment period was it was a done deal. I was told that they're not an Arizona-based company. I went online and actually I saved these because I felt like this was going to happen. I took snapshots of their webpage. Their webpage, their president of this division says chemical, pharma, power generations, and other process industries globally. HBS is a $2.4 billion business headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. Their training facility, headquartered in Arizona. Their top staff, headquartered in Arizona. It says that they have major operations, Phoenix and Arizona. I have packets for the entire city council.
Thank you.
This is an Arizona-based company. They changed their webpage after this came up.
Thank you. We'll make sure the Sergeant at Arms grabs those. Eric Verduzco Vega. Good morning.
Good morning, council members. My name is Eric Verduzco Vega. I'm the president and CEO of the South Bay Latino Chamber of Commerce. We represent roughly 350 businesses throughout the South Bay region of Los Angeles County, many of them being in the San Pedro area and Wilmington area. I'm here to extend our support for awarding Honeywell International the contract to replace the wastewater control system. Our California businesses have one key factor that keeps them competitive throughout the United States, and basically that's our access to natural resources of just every kind. Water, of course, being one of the most important. So I urge you to not make this, to not turn this into a debate about the boycott, but really to think more about the quality of life of our residences. The protection of our natural resources, and also on how to keep our small businesses competitive. And one of those ways is to move these projects forward, to allow our small businesses to have access to procurement, to contracts. And this award is one way. Thank you.
Thank you. CR, either Legend or Legal Senior. Sorry if I can't quite read it. Is it Legend?
No, I'm not a legend, but I might be.
What's your last name, sir?
My last name is Legal. It's Legal.
Legal,
French.
sorry. CR Legal. Got you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, first I want to say I thank you for an opportunity to come before you once again and speak. I'm a citizen of this city, and I'm one of your newest residents. I've been here 60 days now. I'm with Occupy LA. And since you passed your resolution endorsing us to bring our homes here on October 12th, I brought my home, and I've been here over 30 days and 60 days since the occupation. But more importantly, I want to speak to the issue at hand. I am a citizen, and I want to give you my view since you represent the citizen of Los Angeles County and also the city of Los Angeles, that we should enter into a contract for the future reference with a 5-year renewable review so that we give whatever company you select a motivation to perform according to the contract, and they're motivated to do an excellent job. And on that, I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Phil Recht. After that will be Kim Kraft.
Good morning. Phil Recht on behalf of Emerson Process Management. The proposal before you is to give a contract to a company that has absolutely no experience in the wastewater control field, a company that would charge the city $15 to $18 million more than Emerson would for the same work. to give a contract that has reduced scope of work and reduced liability protections for the city compared to the original contract, and to give it to a company that has remarkably low MeBee-Weebee participation, and that is based in Arizona. None of these problems would exist if the contract were given to Emerson, and you have that choice. It's the company with the most experience in the field, with the best technology. It would do the work for $15 to $18 million less than Honeywood, all with high MeBee-Weebee participation and without being based in Arizona. We urge you to reject this contract, to send it back to the board with recommendation to either give it to Emerson or to allow Emerson to bid so it can demonstrate to you precisely the savings that can be achieved if you give the work to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. From Kraft is our next speaker. After that is Samantha Omi. Good morning.
Thank you, council members. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to talk about the most important aspect of this bid in this company, Honeywell. They've agreed, even though this job was bid almost 2.5 years ago, that if they are accepted and today, that they will perform this project, and all their subs will, under the PLA language that was adopted by the Board of Public Works almost a year ago. And what that means is 30% local hire in this community. When we talk about incidences as far as suicides and homelessness, creating jobs is our main priority here. Obviously improving the service that we provide to our taxpayers. Honeywell and all their subs have agreed to do this project under the terms and conditions of that PLA. This group in front of us has went through the process of the bid process. They're very intelligent individuals, very respected. They've selected Honeywell. The recommendation is Honeywell. Honeywell's made an additional commitment to do this under the terms and conditions and create jobs and develop and generate hope in our community for these people who have been unemployed. I urge you to support the recommendation and go forward with this proposal.
Thank you. Samantha Omi is our next speaker. After that is Shamari Davis.
Hi, thank you. Samantha Omi with Honeywell International. Just a couple of comments in response to some of the statements that have been made. Honeywell International, Inc. is not an Arizona-based or headquartered company. Honeywell is headquartered in Morristown, New Jersey. Honeywell is the compilation of two former companies, Allied Signal and Honeywell, neither of which were ever based in Arizona. Minneapolis-based Honeywell, founded in 1885, combined with Allied Signal, which was headquartered in Morristown, New Jersey, to become Honeywell International, Inc. of today. Secondly, as to the experience issue, it was stated that Honeywell does not have the experience in this field. Honeywell has over 30,000 of these systems installed globally at over 8,000 separate sites. We have the experience. This is not about simply whether you have municipal wastewater experience in the U.S. This is a system installation that will be completed, and we are certainly a technology leader here. As related to the higher price alleged, I think that was well addressed by the Bureau earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shamari Davis is our next speaker. And then Thomas Dick.
If it pleases the Council, Garcetti, I'm taking over for on behalf of Shamari Davis.
We can't yield time, but we'll enter you separately if you'll just state, I know who you are, but if you'll state your name for the record, please.
Okay.
Go ahead. You can just state your name for the record.
Tommy Faavai with IBEW Local 11.
Go ahead, Tommy. You can speak.
I just wanted to touch on local hire community agreement, and that's what Honeywell is going to do for this particular project and projects on forward. Putting community back to work, going through our trained apprenticeship programs. That's what it's all about. We don't discriminate against any ethnic backgrounds. We have Latino, Black American. We have all races in our apprenticeship program and straight across the board in all the trades. And they've agreed to do a project labor agreement with this project. And we urge your support for Honeywell for this recommendation to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Dick is our next speaker. After Mr. Dick will be Miriam Fogler in Van Nuys.
Yes, Thomas Dick from Emerson Electric. I want to thank you for the time. I wanted to see there were a few points made on technology. I just wanted to say Emerson is recognized as a global leader in automation technology across all industry segments. This is confirmed by recent wins we've had in Boston and Buffalo, New York in the past few months. We feel we need to be judged fairly on the merits and cost in response to the formal RFP. We were the lowest firm forecast bidder, and we were able to be 100% commercially compliant, the only bidder to be so. That, coupled with our extensive experience, makes us the lowest risk to the city. We feel the way a change order was executed outside of the RFP manipulated or clouded somewhat the pricing advantage we provided, and we showed an apples-to-apples comparison that was not used or was ignored. We believe that even with all the scope and term reductions took place to date, we would still be $15 million lower in price to the city. Further, our contract would be adding 75 new local jobs in the area and significant local services through contractors and subcontractors, as we demonstrated in similar scope in cities like San Diego and Detroit.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in Van Nuys. It's Miriam Fogler. She'll be followed by Donna Pearman, also in Van Nuys.
Okay, first thing hand is that we need to keep the city workers in the sanitation department there, and for future hirees, we need the retiree health care be put back in and negotiated for a nominal amount for future increases. Next year it's not going up, but these people are trained to take care of wastewater over there, and you're not giving them the benefit that they deserve. They're special funded, and they should deserve that benefit, like water and power. I mean, they should be exempt from the city work, the rest of the workforce.
If we can come back to the contract, Ms. Fogler, that's before us, please.
Yes, the contract is necessary. First of all, my husband works there right on the spot, and they need the equipment, need the clean water, and I want to have a definite thing here where the companies, the one that saves the city the most and hires the most people for the city of LA who works for the city. I don't want outside contracting out.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Donna Pearman, also in Van Nuys.
Yeah, I agree that we must have upgrades to have proper equipment, and the sanitation will run more smoothly if they have upgraded and working equipment, so that the employees don't have to spend a long time trying to work on this equipment and trying to get it up to speed. I don't know if Honeywell is the best choice of the matter. They seem to have a lot of experience, but I'm interested about this Emerson, whether they might have been a better choice. I know they made very good electric fans. I don't know if that's the same Emerson. So I hope that you are taking the one that will cost the works the best, but at the lowest possible amount of money, so that we can still have enough money to give it around to the city employees who are actually working on these items. So, but otherwise, Honeywell sounds good, and I believe in upgrades. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll be our last public comment card. We'll go now to Mr. Zine as our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm known for my candidness. I've been lobbied on this matter very heavily on both sides of the fence. There's a huge issue, $88 million, $75 million. There's a lot of money involved. Number one, is it necessary that we do this project now? What's the urgency on this project, since it's been a 2-year evaluation to get to this point?
Thank you, Councilmember Zine. We just a couple months ago, we were here before you asking for approval on funding us for approving a rate adjustment for this very system, wastewater system. The asset value of this is over $22 billion total.
I have that came in the mail to my residence about the rate increase.
Yes, and so the brain behind running and operating the system is the control systems. Like everything else is operated by computers and other automated system. What we're talking about here is upgrading and replacing that because it's old.
But what's wrong with old? A lot of us are
breakdowns.
Old. Mr. Rosendahl and I are old. Mr. Parks is old, but we're still working hard.
And working well.
Thank you very much.
We have some bids
our system is not,
to replace you, don't worry.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Our system is not working well.
So that's the concern. Are we having problems with the
We
system?
are having problems.
Okay.
The upkeep is just getting ahead of us. We cannot keep up.
Okay, so there's an issue that we have to replace the system. Now, Emerson's been there for 15 years?
At Hyperion.
Hyperion.
And we have 3 other plants, and many other pumping plants which do not have Emerson, but Emerson is at Hyperion.
Okay, well, this project is for Hyperion and other locations.
The entire system, yes.
Okay. And other cities feed into our system?
Yes.
Other municipalities feed into our system?
They do. Contract cities, we have 28 contract cities.
That feed into our system?
Yes.
Are they being assessed on this also?
Yes.
So when it comes to the bid that went and the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, there's a big separation between the dollars. Now, I've been informed that one project is full and complete for 15 years, all expenses, and the other, there are exceptions. So when we come to dollar value, 75 versus 88, the full package or a part of the package? Parts of the package. In other words, the package that we're looking at, a full, complete package for the next 15 years at the $88 million value, is that total complete, no change orders, top to bottom, or is the other package with exceptions? Because there's a big gap in the dollar value, 75 versus 88 million. And oftentimes we see a government project, it goes higher because of unexpected expenses. So that's what I'm trying to find out with the dollar value, because I've heard different numbers and different concerns, why one's higher than the other.
That's correct. And so we have a starting point with two different dollar amounts, and then there's a negotiated price as well. So Varuj, start from the beginning.
Good morning, Varuj Apkian, Assistant Director with Sanitation. The price of $88.6 million is to change over existing current system.
The whole system?
The whole system. That
Okay.
includes our 4 treatment plants to be totally upgraded, and also for the 8 pumping plants, along with the collection system, which requires gauging stations and some intelligence for us to minimize any
And this is everything that we need for wastewater process?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. If
Now,
you can conclude
according
after this
to
one.
Oh, he just answered the question.
Go ahead, you can answer,
you
but
can
after this,
finish
if
your
you can.
answer.
Yeah. As it relates to future costs, we do have a 10-year capital improvement projects in our collection system as well as our treatment plants. There are also, this plan is for 10 years, not for this 15-year period. So there are going to be projects that will be coming up soon, and we've tried to, with this particular RFP, try to protect the city for future price hikes by asking the contractors, proposers, to provide us also a unit price proposal which guards the city against arbitrary and predatory price hike of the
So it's
components.
okay, but you still haven't answered the question. 88 versus 75.
Well, the basis, right, the original basis that on a level playing field that they were compared to was the 91 million of Emerson versus 109 of Honeywell. The 75 million that's being quoted right now has no basis right now. The 88.6 million was a price after all of the proposers were ranked and the rank 1, 2, and 3 was established. Then we proceeded by negotiating with the top rank candidate, who was Honeywell. And at that point, based on a couple of processes, one was a value engineering process, and second was in consultation with CAO's risk manager to work on maintaining appropriate level of liability for the contractor. And that yielded a price reduction from 109 million down to 88.6 million. The 88.6 million price is the final negotiated value of changeover of current system in our
Full
wastewater
complete.
facilities.
Full complete. And then that
Correct.
compared to 75 million. The 75 obviously less expensive.
75 million, council member, was a price, an arbitrary price, has no basis, and it is an illusory number as it relates to us.
So there's no
This
basis.
is a number that's been thrown out there that we could have done better if we were given the same opportunity to negotiate. But city is not in the business of bid shopping to concurrently negotiate. As a matter of fact, we were advised that we will proceed with negotiations as it has been detailed in the RFP with the top-ranked proposer. If the negotiation breaks down, we'll move to number 2 and henceforth to number 3 and so on. Emerson's being number 3.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kretz is our next speaker.
Yeah, just to clarify the last discussion. So Honeywell has a lower price before you started your negotiations based on their initial price plus how they would deal with change orders, as opposed to what I think some of us thought was that Emerson had the lower price, but then you negotiated with Honeywell so that you could get below that price.
Starting out, their proposed price, Honeywell was higher. Starting out, Honeywell was higher, Emerson obviously was lower. After the negotiations, Honeywell's price came down to the 89, from the 109 to the 89. Emerson, we never had a chance to be able to negotiate with them, so their price is the same as it was submitted because we never were able to negotiate as we're precluded from being able to do concurrent negotiations. Would their price have come down? It's hard to say. We do know that they had taken a number of exceptions, 51 in their proposal. So if anything, you know, that was the concern that folks, the team has talked about is, would there have been additional cost with Emerson? We're saying there would be because they took 51 exceptions.
Well, then it sounds like we're picking Honeywell based on an apples to oranges comparison, although my understanding is that based on conversations with some of the staff, including yourself, that it wasn't that it was a lower price because you looked at the change order factor and taking that into account, it was a lower price. So Honeywell would have a lower price before the negotiations, because if you're basing it on the negotiations, that's a completely biased approach because you negotiate lower on one and not the other.
You're absolutely correct. The basis of comparison as it relates to which one of the proposals will be the lowest cost to the city of Los Angeles was based on the original submittal. Taking the original $109 million Honeywell submittal and adding the portion for the future work, it's less than taking Emerson's $91 million and adding the future potential future costs. The overall cost of ownership for the city at the face value of what was submitted at the original $109 million was less than the lump sum that was submitted by Emerson plus the cost of the future, as it was examined through our future work exercise.
So once you had already determined that the total package was a lower price for Honeywell, then you negotiated the price down with them.
Yes, Council Member, not only in that particular category, which was 1 out of 6 categories, but also in the other 5 categories of evaluation or criteria of evaluation, Honeywell scored number 1. And overall, by far, became the number 1 selected proposal out of the 3 proposals that we have.
Now, the piece I don't completely understand is experience, because you look at the fact that Emerson has around 40% of the market. You look at, and Honeywell, I believe, has none. You look at the fact that they're here and they worked with us for 15 years. Have we had problems in that working relationship?
No.
So that we would go with a company that no one else has gone with for wastewater in the country over someone that has a huge market share?
Well, the advertised RFP had nothing to do with who has the largest market share. It had to do with who has the best qualification to do work for the city of Los Angeles. We've looked at our diversified evaluation team looked at the experience and qualification of Honeywell doing work of similar nature in relatively more complex industries such as refineries and nuclear power plants, which are more susceptible to danger, and have determined that their qualification is far better, as it's been articulated but by a very detailed cut-over plan that they have submitted as it relates to implementation of this program from the get-go. In contrast, a company that says that they have the largest market share in wastewater and also had presence in our facility for many decades, couple of decades or more, one would expect a much higher level of intimacy detailed in the RFP. And that what came across to our evaluators, seeing that an extremely articulated and detailed cutover plan from a company that never had presence in any of our wastewater plants, but was extremely qualified and demonstrated that throughout the examination process.
To give you any I'm sorry, Mr. Kretz, if you don't mind pressing the button again, because we're quite a bit over. Thank you. Mr. Cardenas is next, and then Mr. Reyes, both for a second time, and then Mr. Kretz. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. I'd like to help clarify for my colleagues. Is this an RFP process or an RFQ process that we went through?
This was an RFP process.
In an RFP process, the normal course of action is that you take an evaluation like you did here, and we went over the table of scoring. The company that got the highest score then negotiates with the city. It's not that the city negotiates with all three. They take the highest score, or the best score, excuse me, sometimes it's the lowest score. They take the best scored company, and then they go ahead and then start negotiating with them. Now, if the negotiations break down or what have you, and you can't come to terms, then you perhaps would go to the second best scored company, then the third, etc. And then it appears that we heard from the second highest scored company in committee or here on the floor today?
We did hear from the second company at the board at that 15 hours, 3 sessions.
And since then, have we heard from them protesting in the council committee that it went through or here on the floor today?
No, we haven't.
Okay, we haven't. But we've heard from the third highest scored company.
Correct.
Okay, and if I wanted to manipulate things, I'd say the lowest scored one because there's only 3. But number 3, we're hearing from them. So even if we weren't able to, at your level, at the staff level, to negotiate with the highest scored company, we would have likely gone to the second highest scored company, unless they just threw up their hands and said, we're out of here, never mind, withdraw our bid or what have you. But they didn't do that during that end of the process. We still had a 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that, because those are excellent questions by my colleague, Councilmember Koretz, but at the same time, we wouldn't normally negotiate with 3 companies. It's one process, and then once you get by that phase, you rank them, and then you negotiate with the highest ranking bidder, and then you go from there. Okay, thank you. In addition to that, I'd like to point out or ask a question. My time's running, so if you can make your answers brief. Is Honeywell, Emerson, or Yokogawa headquartered in Arizona? Headquartered?
No.
Okay, where's Honeywell headquartered?
And to our knowledge, is Morristown, New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay, and Emerson?
Emerson, it's in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh. Okay, and Yokogawa?
They are mainly headquartered in Japan.
Mainly in Japan, perhaps.
But they do have a U.S. manufacturing plant.
Okay. Now, does Honeywell have employees in Arizona?
Their aerospace division that we...
Please answer briefly. Yes. Does Honeywell have employees in Arizona?
Yes.
Okay. Emerson have employees in Arizona?
To our knowledge, yes.
Okay. And Yokogawa?
Not to our knowledge.
Okay. So, well, at least the proposed winner that's before us and the protester, both of them do have employees in Arizona. So both of them actually can be considered that they are based in Arizona based on different ways of interpreting that, but neither one of them are headquartered in Arizona.
That is correct.
Correct? Okay. So one thing that I'd like to point out, apparently, according to the facts that my staff was able to uncover, is that the resolution that the City of Los Angeles has had, I would think, a positive effect, Mr. Reyes and colleagues, in that the Honeywell bidder actually moved some of their employees around and dispersed them, and then that should they win this bid, that the central office will be located in Houston, Texas, not in Arizona, to handle this process, and that the project manager will be based locally and manufacturing and systems assembly will occur in Houston, not in Arizona. And in addition to that, they look to hire about 80 employees or so, based on what they've told us, locally here in the LA area, and also, as it was mentioned by an IBEW representative, that there will be a project labor agreement adhered to on this project as well. So I think there's a lot of victories if we go with the recommended proposed winner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Englander is our next speaker for the first time. Going to hold him? Okay. We'll go to Mr. Reyes for a second time, and we'll come back to Mr. Englander.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to invite Mr. Tom Dick from Emerson to the microphone, if you don't mind. How long were you working with the Bureau of Sanitation?
Since 1984.
1984.
That's when the Hyperion contract was let.
Okay, so Hyperion contract since 1984, working with the city.
Right.
Now, during that process, as a company, were you observing technology improving, and were you looking at ways in which you can improve your systems to address the needs of the city?
Yes. We've done some upgrades to the WDPF system. That was a vintage of technology that we still support. Some of that equipment is outdated, but in service to the city because of the installation. We've kept the city supported with parts and resources to maintain it. We also offered, before the RFQ came out, to do a lower cost migration approach to our newest level of technology innovation. But as we decided that they wanted, the city wanted to do it in a broader fashion, handle more new field construction, and go about the approach that way.
So you had an opportunity by offering this department an approach to achieve the goals of the department 2 years ago, and they chose not to respond.
It was probably closer to 3 years ago.
3 years ago, instead of responding to you, they decided to go to an RFP.
Yes.
I really feel that there's a disingenuous approach to this whole process. Why would you not follow that suggestion as managers instead of putting this council, the commission, the committee through this expensive process and coming back with another RFP with another company when you had a proven entity who was offering you this opportunity to improve? What was the subjective issue there that put you in that place?
Councilmember Reyes, this is a significant issue, of course, and it's important to know that if in fact what Emerson had brought to the table 3 years ago was what we came to see as the need for a comprehensive, more integrated way of keeping up with our control systems. Because from experience, every time there was a new project, we had to do a patchwork approach to be able to integrate a new project into our current system. We no longer could afford to do that. Emerson had proposed to do still very much the same, continue on a patchwork piecemeal model. And we had had enough experience to realize that that is no longer a way in which we could keep up with technology. Just like it is true in so many other parts of information technology, so it is true of our control systems program. Can no longer do patchwork. We spent an awful lot of time, an awful lot of time and money in trying to make one system, a subsystem, compatible with the larger system. And that's what Emerson had proposed to continue to do. We had to open up the envelope and say, this is the time to do a different model. Thus, the multi-year, thus the multi-integration of every aspect and every piece and every element of the control system, whether it's the pumping stations, whether it's the wastewater treatment plants, or whether it's our collection system, all fully integrated and compatible. That's what we brought to you. It is a far more comprehensive way of doing business for the next 15 years. At the end, it's going to be cheaper for the city.
Thank you.
I'll allow Mr. Dick to respond. I mean, this is a critical point here.
Okay, and then we'll go to Mr. Englander next.
Yes, there were several things that were taken into account by the city to look at field wiring and other installations, and in fact the other 4 plants were not Emerson controls. So in the end, there's a broader spectrum, but we could have migrated Hyperion to the current level of technology through a migration path, and then opened that umbrella on the same technology to the rest of the plants.
And that would have overcome the patchwork approach that's being
Absolutely.
asserted.
Absolutely.
Well, you were not given that opportunity 3 years ago.
No, we were not.
Okay,
Mr. Reyes, if I can ask you to press your button again.
Okay.
Continue. Thank you. Don't worry. I know it's frustrating with 3 minutes of time, folks, but we'll continue along. Mr. Englander for the first time, then Mr. Koretz, Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Reyes.
There seems to be a lot of, well, first of all, it's unfortunate this has been politicized to the point that it has. It sounds and appears that staff has done a lot of work on this. It was already heard in committee and the Board of Public Works, which also took a position on this. But my question is on the actual negotiated bid. And what was negotiated? What did the city give up? I don't think it would be in anybody's interest just to throw in, was it $16 million, $16.2 million, general conditions, commercial terms. What are those? Are we more liable? Are we more vulnerable? What is risk management? What have they said on that as well? If you can address that.
The negotiation took place for primarily a couple of areas that generated price reduction. One of them had to do with something that was already had to do with the level of liabilities. City wanted to maintain a liability of 100% price of the contract to the end of the contract. However, as we know that the major part of the liability has to do with the changeover of system by system. We consulted with the city risk manager in the CIO's office, and we had extensive discussions with them and with the proposer on how can we look at the risk factor. And at this time, we're totally satisfied as it relates to the level of risk and the liabilities and liquidated damages that are inherent and it's part of the contract. The second part
Now,
of
with
that...
with the risk management part of it, and you're satisfied, our risk management has looked at this thoroughly and vetted?
Thoroughly, it's been looked at CAO's risk manager. Yes, sir.
And then on the technical side of it was another $4.2 million in savings that says for the termination cabinets which provide a safety barrier for technicians working on plant wiring control system electronics. And so if they're not doing that, did they look at that part of it as well? And are we comfortable that we're not creating a new risk?
No, as a matter of fact, that increases or decreases our vulnerability. Our specification had to be generic enough to allow multiple of proposers, we're talking about multinational level proposers, to propose on this project. So the design was such that from the control system there was an intermediate cabinet to the field wiring. The inherent design of existing Honeywell system eliminates that middle cabinet, therefore reduces the number of the connections quite a lot, by thousands, and therefore not only the more connection you have, the more vulnerable the system gets because each one of them could get loose and so on. So that saved us money. There were other areas that saved us money technically. City has a set of graphics to be used in our wastewater treatment plants that the operators are familiar with. Now these require custom-made graphic design to suit what we had requested for. Honeywell proposed to use their own custom graphics, so it would not be any requirements to develop and design new graphics for our computer system. We looked at, our evaluation team looked at the graphics, and they saw it even superior than what we had. We said, fine, let's save some money on that one. That was another item, part of the $4.5 million reduction.
Okay, and just real quick, my last question, and it's not my issue, but it's been brought up, and it's also in the documents and the lobbying papers as well that were submitted as part of the public record that states that as the Arizona issue that keeps coming up. And so my question on that is a legal one for the city attorney. If a real quick question, would we, in fact, have to, if we awarded the contract, to any of these companies? Would we have to actually vote, as we have in the past, on Taser, for example, or photo red light, for an exemption to the current policy that we have in place? Just as a simple, real quick, yes or no, is that part of this package? If we went with any of these current companies based on the policy we have in place, because it's in the arguments from all the different lobbying firms that have weighed in on this as well. And I just want to find out, I've gotten some different answers.
Short answer is no. You would not need to take any special action to have an exemption or an exception to the city's policy. The direction that the council gave to the departments in May of 2010 was to not award contracts to firms that are headquartered in Arizona. At that time, the council gave an instruction to the city attorney, or a request, which is to prepare an ordinance that would then be brought back to the council for further action. That ordinance has been prepared, it's been submitted, but it has not been acted upon by the council.
So the policy that's been passed as a resolution about travel and other things, it's separate, but we wouldn't have to, as it stands right now,
As it stands right now, based on the action the council has taken, there would be no separate action required to award a contract to any of the three proposers with regard to the criteria.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm still struggling with this issue. I don't know where I am on it at the end of the day. One of the things that that bothers me, as Mr. Reyes noted, is it seems like this could have been done with the existing company. And I'm just wondering why we didn't go that route. Did we have problems with them? Did we have a bad relationship with them? Or could we just have worked with them on upgrading the Hyperion plant without having to reopen the process?
Well, Emerson has performed satisfactorily over the past presence that they had in our treatment plant. But the problem that the Bureau faces is this multi-system, especially like in the collection system, we have pumping plants that I could cite a pumping plant failure in LA County system, which generated a huge spill with beach closures. In some of our pumping plants, our control system is very archaic. It communicates with modem systems. And the scope of this competitive, I have to emphasize the word competitiveness, not sole source, was to ask this community of providers of control system to come and give us a complete changeover, not just for Hyperion, but the overall system. We want to recognize business efficiency. We cannot no longer afford to have folks that are diminishing as time goes by with their knowledge walking out the door that cannot maintain multiple systems across our board. We lack the same person to be able to have the knowledge of going from plant A to plant B to C to D or any of the pumping plants and perform a maintenance function. Or if an operator goes from one location to another, performs the other function. The patchwork that was mentioned does not contain the scope of the contract that was developed with a very strategic mind at work with a group of people to look at all aspects of what's the best thing to do for the city of Los Angeles and what approach to use to deliver this particular project. Cybersecurity is one of our major concerns. As you know, there are things happening in the cybersecurity arena. One of our treatment plants is one of the highest targets as it relates could be for cybersecurity. We're talking about man-made and also natural disaster. This system will unite all of our facilities together, so in case of a disaster, we could operate potentially from one location for everywhere else and to have a good response plan. Today, we are experiencing inefficiencies in spare part storage. We have multiple spare parts for various systems that we have, and having one system would have allowed us to have less number of spare parts, which is again business efficiency and more cost efficiency for the Bureau. These are reasons that we have decided to go through this competitive process, and we have sounded this with the community of other folks in other treatment plants to find out what is the best approach on delivering a project that will bring this kind of business efficiencies and security and emergency response to the Bureau of Sanitation while discharging our core business, avoiding any spills or any mishaps in our system.
And I have to admit, it gives me a little bit of pause when I look at the collective wisdom of all the other municipal governments across the country. How do you explain the fact that 40% of the other municipalities are using this company and none are using Honeywell?
Bob. And then we'll go to Mr. Weezer after this answer.
Bob Irvin, Director of Systems with Bureau of Sanitation. Honeywell's indicated that because of the complexity of dealing with municipal markets, they haven't gone out and actively entertained proposals or bids in this arena. When this fairly groundbreaking RFP went out, they realized that they had something they could offer the municipal market, and especially in an open competitive process like this. They have state-of-the-art systems, and the fact that they were rated #1 in this competitive proposal speaks to that. The experts that rated these rated them very highly. So it's only with this kind of an opportunity, I think, Honeywell decided that this was a good chance they wanted to take and enter this kind of a competitive marketplace. I think they saw an opportunity here, and they decided to take a chance and make the jump.
Thank you. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the Arizona issue, the city attorney mentioned that you have drafted the ordinance as to when we can and cannot do exceptions and some clarifying guidelines on that. What committee is that in?
Let me pull up my copy of the ordinance here. The ordinance was transmitted to the City Council, I believe, on June 17th. I do not know what committees it has been referred to. All I have is our copy of the
It was submitted to Council June 17th.
Correct.
Of this year?
Of this year.
Okay, so we as a council have not acted upon that, and that's why, with respect to the questions on whether it's headquartered or based or number of employees, we really have no guidance as to does it fit the criteria or not to make an exemption or exception or to not do business with a company simply because of our economic boycott. So it's incumbent upon this council to act upon that ordinance as soon as possible so that we're not in these types of situations again where we're not sure if it fits that criteria or not. But aside from that, on the Arizona issue, who are you dealing with? I mean, Honeywell has a number of divisions, as many large companies do. What is the name of that division that you're dealing with?
It's the automation, process automation solutions.
The automation and
Honeywell Process Solutions.
Yeah, Automated and Control Solutions Division.
Correct.
And where is that division located?
Minneapolis.
The documents I have submitted by Honeywell says that it's located at Phoenix, Arizona. So is it Minneapolis or is it Arizona?
It is Minneapolis. The senior member of the company who has a large base to cover, because this is a global company, the office, her office, that she signed the documents, her office is located in Arizona.
So, but the division is based in Minneapolis?
Correct.
The president, how do you define base? It's the president, the executive team,
I think the proper term to be used is headquartered. The draft ordinance that we have submitted, based on the legal definition of headquartered, talks about where an entity's business activities are directed, coordinated, and controlled. Honeywell International, Inc., who this contract is to be awarded to, that definition of headquartered would be in New Jersey. The
we know that.
Automation Control Systems division, which is not a separate legal entity, it's just an operating division, is in Minneapolis under that definition of headquartered.
And so when you were initially engaging with Honeywell, we got a number of documents that submitted the Arizona address, and their own documents have mentioned that they were located, that division was located in Arizona. When did they change? When did it come to fruition that, after the documents that we saw after, at some point, they no longer used Arizona? When did that happen?
Well, we received the RFP in December of 2009. At that time, the documents that were signed and given to us was from an office in Arizona.
Okay.
Once the ordinance came up from the council that says, to the extent possible, do not do business with Arizona headquartered companies, we investigated, and that's the time that we have brought up the information.
And that was during the RFP process, or had a decision already been made?
No, that was after the RFP was released in mid-2009, July of 2009. We received the proposals in December of 2009. Council motion was in May of 2010.
And when did you make your decision as to who you were going to award this contract to?
This decision was made through the process. Just a second, let me refresh my timeline here.
I know my time is up, Mr. President. I got this answer, and I'll re-push my button.
Thank you.
When did they decide? Well, I don't want to take up more time publicly.
I'm sorry, the decision was made right before we went to the Board of Public Works, after we discussed the process with our city attorney. I don't have it handy, but it was in 2010.
Before May, after May? That's when we passed our ordinance.
The process began upon receive of the thing, and it was a lengthy process of a three-stage process.
Okay.
I don't have that now date readily available, but I'll get it in a matter of minutes.
I'll talk sidebar with your staff on that. Thank you.
Mr. Labange?
Thank you very much, Mr. Enrique Sandoval. How are you today?
Feeling good, Councilman.
So of all the time as a manager, how much time you had to spend on this particular project? A significant amount over the last several years?
Yeah, in peaks and valleys, yes.
It took a long time to get to this point, but what you are doing with this process here, you're taking the four major plants that we have here, the Tillman plant in Sepulveda, the Glendale, Los Angeles plant, and the Terminal Island plant.
And the Hyperion.
And the Hyperion plant, to combine it under one operator, if you could say that, near the operator or one operator. And that's important as an engineer, because I think one of the public comments that I heard, there's two public comments. The first thing I heard is about jobs, which I think is extremely important. The representative spoke about jobs. It's a contract. It puts people to work within the next few months. The next thing I heard that still rings in my ear is someone from a water quality board. Who was here from the water quality board?
Sam Unger was here.
Right, and he said unequivocally to go for it, move forward. I do remember the time, members, as we had, and I don't like to use this word because I have such respect for the Department of Water and Power and the people who work for water and power, but there's been a rash of water breaks due to age, due to settlement, whatever the case, water flow. Right now, currently, we're on a rash. If you ask people, yeah, the lines already break. But I remember when your lines always broke. And it wasn't until your bureau put together a focus to try to change that. It wasn't until we developed the Hyperion sewer treatment plant, which I believe Bob Horry was key on that. Donald Tillman was key on the Valley one. So these engineers who used to be on the 6th floor in this building focused on it. And now this is our turn to focus on something for the next generation. Because we used to pour it straight out of pipe into the ocean. And now with sophistication, we're able to transform, but we have to go even further. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This is a good thing for the city for water quality.
It's essential.
and the Board of Public Works, they approved this, or did they pass on this?
They approved it.
They approved it, so that's very important. Just ask a question for the city attorney. Mr. City Attorney, are you familiar with issues? And I love all of America. I wish all America could be thinking the right way, but some people think wrong. In Arizona, didn't some of those issues that were very offensive to many, weren't they removed by the courts?
The most controversial provisions were enjoined.
Were enjoined. So it's
Correct.
1070 is not 1070. 1070 is Los Angeles' it's KNX, which is 50,000 watts, which you can hear all over Southern California. 1070 in Arizona has been watered down, correct? In the sense of what was objectionable to us, right?
The most controversial provisions were, I can't really cite which ones.
And were some of the, and I will say misguided representatives recalled from office in Arizona due to their highly insensitive statements as it would relate to people who are in this country?
I think you're asking me a leading question.
All right, I'm going to ask Jerry Miller, who's the CLA, because you're the city attorney. Point being, members of the council, this issue, vetted by our Board of Public Works, vetted by our Bureau of Sanitation, does take and modernize our 4 plants in a system that they feel will be right for Los Angeles. On these other issues, and I relate to the 4th District Councilman of the City of Phoenix and converse, there has change taken place in Arizona, and more change will probably take place. So the issue is here is what is right for Los Angeles and what is the right company to select. And through a process, they selected the company that's before us called Honeywell. So with that in mind, I say that's where we should go in listening to what our representatives say. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney, and thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Mr. Sanitation.
Thank you. Mr. Zine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. None of us are experts in this field. That's pretty obvious. But we've got questions that many of the voters would have. Why this, why that? The clarification, is it a 10 or a 15-year program?
This is a 15-year contract.
Okay. So within the next 15 years, the system will be upgraded and latest technology will be in place.
Correct.
And along the way, between now and 15 years from now, the technology may change. Are we going to put in technology as of today versus 5 years from now, which obviously things improve?
Correct. Specifically, we will do the changeover in segments, plant by plant, system by system, starting with the oldest, which is Hyperion Collections first, and then moving to other treatment plants. Perceivably, the construction or the changeover will take place in 7 years. At that point, obviously the latest plant will have the latest technology or the newer generation comparing to Hyperion. By contract, contractor is required to upgrade all the software and hardware to that same level at the midpoint of the contract.
At the price given, $88 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Furthermore, at year 13, 2 years prior to expiration of the contract, they will do another upgrade of bringing anything. That is like probably several years later, because many of these take a leap every 5 to 7 years on newer technology.
Just like home computers.
Correct. So at the end of the contract, or near end of the contract, City will have the latest technology, hardware and software in place, plus an 8 years worth of spare parts to be supplied to the city. So essentially, this modernization project will carry us way beyond the 15-year, but it's a 15-year contract.
And then the other question, I have one more. You mentioned that you went back to Honeywell on their first price, $109 million. They reduced it down to $88 million. You didn't go back to Emerson to get a lower price from them. You only negotiated with Honeywell. Why didn't you go back to Emerson to see if they would be more competitive?
Because in advice of the city attorney, that would be illegal to do that because it will be considered bid shopping. The process as it was delineated in the RFP required us to rank them based on the face value of what they had submitted, move on the interview process, do the final ranking, and then start negotiating with the top proposer. If the negotiation breaks down,
Then you go to the
we
next
move to the second one. If it breaks down, then we move to the third one.
And that's the rule the city has?
That's how it's been written down in the RFP and to the advice of the city attorney. Although the RFP gave us the concurrent negotiation opportunity as written in the RFP, per the advice of city attorney, we chose to negotiate with the top proposer, then go to the second, and then go to the third, not subject to city.
When you go shopping for a car or some other item, you'll competitively check on the internet. I mean, we're competitive shoppers, and we'll put one against the other to see, obviously, the lowest price. We could have done that. I don't know why we don't do that as a practice to try and save dollars for the taxpayers.
We'll leave that for your
If the city attorney could just answer that, Mr. President.
Okay.
That's the purpose of the RFP. You put your best foot forward. You're ranked on a level playing field. Based on that ranking on a level playing field, Honeywell was ranked the #1 proposer. At that point, the city negotiates with that firm that, based on the evaluation criteria, presents the best value for the city, and the negotiations proceed accordingly.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes will be next.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Dick, can I call you back up to the microphone? There's a question about PLAs and working with the workers. Does Emerson offer the same opportunity?
Yes, in our bid, we showed the local content that we had with local contractors, both on the installation contractor side, local engineering firms, and indeed we would create 75 new jobs for people that we would locate from Emerson into the city proper during the entire 15-year course of the project.
75 new jobs based on current operation, or 75 new jobs based
Plus
on...
millions of dollars through subcontractors and contractors in support of installation and construction.
This issue of piecemealing and these complications, can you speak to that?
I think there are issues here outside of the control system. But from a control system perspective, we could upgrade Hyperion, which is going to be the first plant that's done anyway. Everything else then under that umbrella could be expanded. But we respect from the RFP what was put together. I think the issue, and to me it ties to the change order issue. There's a lot of clouds around that, and I think if you look at how that's put together, there's a glaring gap here. When you look at the field wiring, which was one of the big issues in doing this broader scope, to say that
when you look at the what?
Field wiring, the construction side, there's a lot of corrosion out there. A lot of the wires are bad. So it was talked about in the negotiation that you would take the price down by $5 million or $4 million to take out termination cabinets. In that same change, the number of wires that needed to be replaced were reduced. We had committed to the RFP, it says replace as necessary. Since those were all the problems, we said we would replace 100% of that cabling. What came out in the reduced scope is that number has been capped at, I believe it's 40%. It may be 20, but the number is reduced so that anything else that you find out there will be an incremental change to the city.
So within the system, you could have created efficiencies.
Yes.
And you would have lowered costs and less money from our pockets.
And eliminated risk for the future. We looked at replacing all field wiring to say, why put ourselves in the city at risk of a discharge or something because of bad cabling or remobilization? Here, you've actually capped it in the contract, which opens up a door for a contractor to come in and charge additional funds as a change order. In that same change order piece that came out in the beginning, if I can speak to the point, the issue for the change order and the unit prices that were defined in the RFP were meant initially to be the sum of the parts to show how you get to the whole. Then there was an exercise outside of the initial RFP to come to a meeting and present an arbitrary change order. We did that, and we made it clear that that was assuming a whole new plant. Whenever we got into the meetings, it was established, well, what about if we had 20% spare and we're doing an add-on? We clarified that. We submitted back in writing to what that would do to the numbers, but that was disregarded. So I feel that that puts us on an unfair playing field. And finally, in regard to that, from a change order standpoint, while that was used in the evaluation, the only commitment in this contract is the base contract. All the rest was one change order evaluation out of context, speculated, in my view, and added in to make a future adjustment on pricing.
Now, was this discussed in committee and or in commission?
We tried to. We really did not get any real traction. It's very difficult sometimes in these forums to get that level of detail into the time frames.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you.
Mr. Koretz already had his question answered, so Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I hope people aren't confused, because when you sift through all of the smoke, I don't think it's a very confusing matter. But I would like to, I'm forced to actually ask Mr. Dick a question, since you've afforded yourself to answer questions on behalf of council members today. Who do you work for?
Emerson Electric.
Thank you. To the staff of the city, thank you. I'm done asking you questions. Thank you. You can sit down, Mr. Dick. Thank you. Again, I've met with, and my staff have met with the Emerson folk. As a matter of fact, a heck of a lot more than we've discussed with the Honeywell folk. And the Yokogawa folk kind of disappeared, so we haven't talked to them. But what I would like to point out is that I appreciate the lobbying on behalf of the hired guns for both sides, and the effort that people are putting in trying to clarify their perspective on what the truth is or what have you. But I think we had a lot of opportunity today to ask specifics about the process and specifics about whether or not what makes sense to go forward with. And so far, I believe that we still should go forward with the recommended proposed winning bidder, and which would be Honeywell. And to those of us colleagues who are concerned about the Arizona matter, you can actually vote for this and consider it a tremendous victory, because Honeywell has stated for the record, and I have no reason to believe that they won't follow through with it, they stated that their Arizona employees, which they have some, and so does Emerson, their Arizona employees are not going to be working on this product and on this matter should they win this bid. That the employees that are in Houston, Texas are going to be doing the work. And the 80 or so employees that they hire locally to be here on the job, on the sites, are going to do the work. And even their managers, they even stated for the record that their managers who may have touched this stuff into the future from Arizona are no longer going to be touching this stuff. So if anything, for those of us who are concerned, and I say us, concerned about the shenanigans and the kinds of things that are coming out of the legislature in Arizona and the embarrassment to this country, the message has been sent and the message has been received, and actions are being taken on behalf of Honeywell should they get this contract. So the resolution that we passed here in the city of Los Angeles, boycotting Arizona, has had a positive effect on this process that's before us. But when you look at the details of who should get the bid, it should be Honeywell. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Colleagues, in these difficult economic times, there's a lot of money on the table. There's a lot of money that could be saved. You know, there's a issue here of what's genuine, what isn't. There's enough questions here that need to be, I believe, revisited. But aside from that, there's a quote from Martin Luther King I just want to amplify. It says, "A law that exists within a nation can't be considered just if they correlate with moral law and order." Colleagues, when we passed a resolution, we used terms like base and headquartered. Yes, Councilman Cardenas, there has been an impact. We did have the author recalled from Arizona. He's no longer in that position. We did have a sense of accomplishment, but the fact is, in this process, what was ignored was the will and desire of this council based on the resolution that was drafted. And to me, that's something we need to amplify more now than ever, because what's happening in Georgia, what's happening in other states, in which it is considered appropriate, okay, legal to deport American citizens based on the way they look. And that is a national trend that exists right now. So the second largest city in this country took a position to fight that injustice. So I want to stay focused on what's in front of us from an economic point of view. I strongly believe that there's enough questions and doubt where we can still save money for the city, still produce, if we allowed Emerson to give its full picture. We just heard from the representative that he was never given the opportunity in committee or commission to respond to some of the assertions given how the process unfolded. I'm disappointed that we cannot have a quicker turnaround from the city attorney's office in defining these issues. And yes, it's sitting with the council now, but quite frankly, the draft that we got, you can drive a truck through it. The end result did not really address the spirit of the resolution. So I'm disappointed there. But the fact that we had a body, a city department, who understood the spirit and the intent of the boycott, chose to ignore it based on technical changes, because there's documentation that says based in Arizona, and after it came out, you see the changes after it's known, and that is in writing. So it doesn't smell right. From a moral level, there's questions economically in terms of what's feasible, how can we save money, and the monies are such that there's so much on the table that does deserve a revisit. I would ask that we send this back to committee and look at this issue and break down these questions in a more defined manner and clear the air and get rid of all the smoke and mirrors. And yes, and perhaps the lobbyists too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
Mr. President, was that a motion?
Yes, that was a motion, Mr. Reyes. Is there a second on the motion? Send it to committee? Yes, Mr. Huizar. Okay. Mr. Rosendahl.
One, folks, on many levels. I did my homework on this. I got just a couple of quick questions again for the record, okay? The proposed contract with Honeywell is over $18 million more expensive than a contract with Emerson would be. True or false?
False.
Why?
Because the cost is not just the initial change, it involves the future change also. Overall, we're looking at what's the best value for the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, second question. Honeywell has no experience in wastewater control systems, while Emerson has over 40% of this market in the United States.
Emerson does have experience in wastewater market. And the second part, Honeywell does have wastewater experience. And as it relates to the market dominance at 40%, that might be true also.
The City Council is being asked to approve a contract with Honeywell that has greatly reduced liability and indemnity provisions to a company that has no experience in the field.
False.
And the fourth one is Honeywell is one of the largest employers in all of Arizona, with over 10,000 employees working in and around Phoenix.
I have heard about the 10,000, but I do not know if they are the largest entity in Arizona or not.
Okay, there's been scuttlebutt that behind the scenes there's been some personality issues with Emerson, and that you just didn't want those characters back because of some personality issues. Any truth to that at all?
That is a false thing. They have performed well over the past 25 years, and we've had a fair, unbiased, and transparent process in place. We have brought in subject matter experts from across 3 bureaus of sanitation, engineering, and contract administration. And each one of them have done their evaluation in their specific area of expertise. The decision, the combined decision of that group was subject to a scrutiny by our executive steering committee in Bureau of Sanitation, followed by consultation with the city attorney. We've taken this to the Board of Public Works. After 15 hours of hearing the protest and all issues, the Board of Public Works unanimously rejected the protest of Emerson in every item that they had and moved the matter to for approval to Energy and Environment Committee. CAO had their own independent analysis, and they have been subject to the same discussion
Okay,
and same
Emerson
allegations.
said that they wanted 3 years ago to upgrade the system and add the new technology. Is that true?
3 years ago, they had submitted a $5 million upgrade thing that does not include nowhere close to what we're asking with this particular RFP. Even the equipment that were coded in there to do the upgrade were not FOB Hyperion. The shipment was not included. The quotation they submitted, which was unsolicited by the Bureau of Sanitation, did not even include any liabilities, any liquidated damages, any warranties. None of that was included. The RFP that was prepared with quite a lot of thought involves a lot more than what was submitted for them as a patchwork to just Hyperion alone.
Okay,
Thank you,
last
Mr.
question
Rosendahl.
is the city attorney.
If we can, if you don't mind, press your button just one more time. Okay.
Sure. Okay, I just
You
wanna
can
ask-
continue because you're second, so just press the button one more time, and
Okay.
then you can continue.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
That's the advantage of not speaking at all before, so you have a chance at the end. So we passed an ordinance here because we're fed up with a law that Arizona has that we find is not only unconstitutional, but inhumane. The emotions of my colleague, my seatmate, Reyes, is compelling to me. I care about people. I don't like people being yanked out of cars, treated and abused because they might have a different color than white. And that seems to be part of the racist issues we see going on in Arizona. What is this ordinance or law that we passed, and how does it impact this decision? When I'm told Honeywell is in all 50 states, corporate office is in New Jersey, where I grew up, and that, yes, they have a division there, but has nothing to do with this. And look at Wells Fargo Bank is one of our people. A lot of people are in Arizona. How do we stand up and say to our people who feel abused by Arizona, and their dumb law, how we could vote on this? Help me, city attorney. That's my last hurdle.
Absolutely. You directed the city departments, and that direction was to take effect immediately, to not award any contracts to firms that are headquartered in Arizona. The law already defines what it means to be headquartered in an area, and so that direction, when you adopted that motion on May 12, 2010, became immediately effective. You also requested the city attorney to prepare an ordinance that would then prohibit the city from contracting with firms that were based in Arizona. You didn't define what based is. The ordinance does that. There are some limitations that you put in the original motion to the extent permissible, consistent with the city's interests, if there's no significant additional cost to the city. So in the spirit of the direction from council, our office has prepared an ordinance that defines what it means to be based in, because otherwise it would not be a permissible prohibition, because we need to know what we're acting upon. And we've built into that proposed ordinance the various limitations that were in the original council motion. Now, as that ordinance has been submitted to the city council through the committee process, this was our best shot. It's the first draft of the ordinance. As it goes through the committee process, I expect that there are going to be revisions made so that ultimately when we bring to the full council a motion on the Arizona, it will have gone through that committee process, the hearing process, and it will be something that the full council will be prepared to act.
So in other words, we don't have it in place now.
It was submitted in June, and I'm told that it was referred to the Audits and Governmental Efficiency Committee. I'm told that it was waived, and now it is in as the currently constituted ITGS committee.
And if we passed it through that committee and the council, would that deny Honeywell an opportunity or not?
If the ordinance that was currently written were to be adopted by the council and it applied to this, then Honeywell would be within the definition of what it means to be based in Arizona. However, the ordinance, consistent with the original council motion, has a number of exemptions that will give effect to the language that council had, such as no additional significant cost to the city, consistent with the city's interests, and so on.
All right, so as our lawyer, can we vote for Honeywell or can we vote for Emerson? What can we do?
As the city attorney, you can approve the contract as it's currently written without taking any additional action relative to the Arizona matter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. We just added some more hours to this discussion, and rightfully so. We are legislators, we are deliberators, and again, I want to thank the staff for the clarity of your answers of your questions, and also to the public who had an opportunity to speak again. And also, I'd like to point out, thank you very much for those questions, Mr. Rosendahl. They were excellent. One of the things I'd like to remind all of us, that it's been said several times, it was said in committee and it was said here before, that there was approximately 13 to 15 hours or so of discussion at the commission level. And they actually went through all of the objections or the protests from Emerson and or anybody from the community that brought them up. So the bottom line is, I think that we should not allow ourselves to assume that this has not been vetted publicly. And I remind us that that 13, 15 hours was actually a publicly held meeting. It was not behind closed doors. So people had the opportunity to come and speak. The protesters or the people who objected had an opportunity to express themselves. That was deliberated point by point by point, and here we are today. So the fact of the matter is, when it comes to an opportunity to be heard, that definitely is without question that whoever wanted to be heard on this had a tremendous opportunity to do so publicly, both at the commission level, at the committee level, and here at the City Council. In addition to that, I think it's very important for us to understand that however somebody votes on this today, I don't think is in any way an indictment on whether or not we as individual council members support or are appalled at SB 1070, the famous law that was passed in Arizona. In addition to that, I remind you that it did have a positive effect, the resolution that we have enacted in the City of Los Angeles, and that the proposal that's before us today is that we approve this and award the contract to Honeywell. The work that will be done will not be emanating out of Arizona. So I think that you can vote for this and consider it a victory if you feel the way I do about SB 1070. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes for the fifth time.
Colleagues, this is one of those, I've been on this floor for 10 years as a council member, 20 years as staff. To me, this is a classic case of how a process could be manipulated in a way in which you look at information and it gets one-sided when you don't have the ability to respond to some of the technical details that were laid out. And that's unfortunate. We also have a body in Emerson that is willing to go PLF to sustain the workers, to add jobs, to lower the costs, and if it would have been allowed 3 years ago, would have had current technology in place. And that didn't happen. We also have a profound moment in which we can reinforce the moral high ground as a city and not allowing a major company who does have a presence as a base, perhaps as a headquarters, as a base in Arizona. So I want to just say that for the record. And I appeal to you to allow for a clear picture to emerge by sending this back to committee. Thank you.
Okay. So the last speaker, our votes will go in reverse order to the motions made. The first one is to send it to committee. And that was to Energy and Environment Committee, Mr. Reyes? It was to Energy and Environment? Okay. Please open the roll on sending back to committee. Mr. Reyes' motion is before us first to send to committee. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 7 noes.
Okay. That does not carry. Next, we have the committee report before us. Please open the roll. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 2 noes.
Okay, that carries. All right, so next order of business, please. Next item called special.
Mr. President, there's a request to continue item 9 to December 2nd.
Yes, please. Let's do that without objection. And also, if we can continue item 31 until next Tuesday, the 29th.
December 7th?
Sorry, December 7th. Excuse me. Yes. Today is. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Next item is item 12, called special by Councilmember Zine.
Number 12. Interesting. Mr. Garcetti?
And I excused him, but that takes it down to 10.
Mr. Krikorian is being excused. Okay. Mr. Garcetti is leaving.
I'll find out right away.
Hold on, as we clear the chambers.
Alacon's excused.
Mr. Alacon was excused.
And Wesson had some medical problems.
I didn't know.
Don't worry.
So now we're down to 11 members.
No, you're okay right now. Just keep going through the things right now. Just keep trying to.
Can we just continue? Hold 12 and let's go to the next item.
Go to the easy one.
Item 14, call special by Councilmember Weezer.
Mr. Weezer, number 14. Number 14, Mr. Weezer.
14. Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is actually a report back. I'm asking our staff.
As we leave the chambers, can you please be quiet since we're still in session? Sergeant Arms, can you please quiet down those that are leaving the chambers? Thank you. Courtesy to Mr. Weezer. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This went through Plum, and we asked for staff to report back in 30 days. What it is asking our departments to come back and see if we should lift the $1 million cap that we currently have on our Mills Act funds. Mills Act is money that is provided to those individuals with property that they preserve for historical purposes. It is a tax savings measure, and we haven't raised the amount of money available in this fund for a number of years. I believe it's about 15 years, but I need to double check that. This is going to be a report back. I look forward to getting a report back on this. And we've started a Survey LA where we're going to eventually identify potentially historic sites throughout the city. We've done one or two pilots. One is in Bow Heights, and I can't recall where the other is. But eventually, as the city gets better data on what are potentially historic sites and the ability to register them as historical monuments, there's going to be a higher dependence upon these funds. And I just want to make sure that we are prepared not only to be able to continue to preserve Los Angeles history, but that we do that in the next possible budget cycle so that we're looking ahead and ensure that our historical sites are preserved. So we'll hear back on this in Plum, but just want to raise the issue now so we could all become more aware of the need to put more, to lift the cap on the Mills Act funding that we have available. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Weezer. On that item, colleagues, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Next item, please. Number 26 and 32 next, please. 26 and 32. Number 26, John Walsh. Not here. On number 26, anyone? Seeing none, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Number 32. 26 forthwith. Thank you, Mr. Labange. Number 32, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh is not here. Any colleagues on number 32? Seeing none, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That matter is approved. Number 39 next, please. Daniel Wright, number 39. Mr. Wright, are you here? Mr. Wright, number 39.
Thank you, Daniel Wright, on behalf of the Silverstein Law Firm representing Kramer Metals Incorporated. Item number 39 on your meeting agenda affects the Slauson Central Retail Project, a 1999 proposal by the CRA which used eminent domain to take the land owned by qualified shopping center developers in order to hand it over to the politically connected group of concerned citizens of South Central LA and Regency Centers favored by Councilmember Jan Perry. On previous occasions, Ms. Perry has stood before this council and recused herself based upon an unspecified conflict of interest on this matter. Therefore, the fact that this item was put on the council's agenda last week in a motion by Ms. Perry should make the public wonder what her conflict of interest was before and how it apparently has disappeared so that Ms. Perry is now active on this controversial project. The motion says that the construction of the project is, quote, expected to be completed in 2012, close quote, and because it is, quote, nearly completed, tenant relocation payments are needed to assist displaced tenants. These are interesting statements by the council office because, to the best of our knowledge, the project is in fact not under construction, remains in litigation over various illegal city and CRA actions, and the only tenant owed relocation is my client, Kramer Metals. So who are the phantom plural tenants who are being relocated, and why would the money not already be in place for the relocation costs? Is it possible that the transfer to AB 1290 funds is for another undisclosed purpose? What exactly is the intent of this motion now that the CLA has been asked to implement it? Is it a way to attempt to move funds that are supposed to be subject to the California Supreme Court stay against redevelopment agencies in the Monsanto's case, which will be decided in January? These questions remain unanswered, and our objections today express our intent to sue over this issue if it proves that that this has been an improper move of funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. With that, if any members wishing to be heard? If not, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on 39 and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that'll be approved. Without objection, we'll continue 38 until Friday. Okay, Mr. Huizar, thank you. That'll be till December 2nd. Item 23, we had cards from the public as well. John Walsh and Matt Dowd are not here. Do we have Ms. Pearman or Ms. Fogler and Van Nuys? I think they have left as well, so we'll close the public hearing on 23. If we can please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
As approved on 18, there's been an amendment already circulated, so if we can take that up next. If we can open the roll on the item as amended, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
As approved, Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. Forthwith on 18 and forthwith on 8. Thank you.
Okay, we'll send those both forthwith. Item 33 is next before us for cards also. We have Matt Dowd, who's left, and Robert Hills. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Hills, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Hills, and I'm the Executive Director of the NCPD Anti-Graffiti Project. Just so this isn't a total downer, I would like to tell the councilman we do support the tracking motion, and if the motion on signage in stores does not replicate the state mandated sign, we would be happy to produce the materials for that. We oppose spending additional professional time and money on reviewing the Portland model, as its premise is flawed and has virtually no value to law enforcement. This is a program that would register buyers of items listed as graffiti instruments and take a lot of personal information and keep it spread out over a number of retail establishments for a period of 2 years. In Portland, they've collected over 2 million packets of data, and not one has been connected to a graffiti vandal. We would suggest that were you to do research here with some of the high-priced talent that is listed in this motion, we would suggest that the research be directed to the internet sellers of graffiti implements who on a daily basis violate your ban on sale to minors and on a daily basis do not pay taxes in the city of Los Angeles. And I think that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any members wishing to be heard on this item? If not, I will close the public hearing, and we'll go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Item 33, Mr. Zine on item 12.
Thank you. Number 12, this matter deals with the revenue manager position, and I wanted to make sure that it is in the CAO's office, as was directed by the council. During committee, it was discussed to go to the mayor's office, and I also want to make sure that once this person is selected, they come to the Audits and Government Efficiency Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, where they will be given information once they're selected to come to those two committees and give us an outline exactly what they're going to be doing, and then report to the committees every quarter. Since we're facing a $250 million deficit next fiscal year, we want to make sure that this position is actually coming forth with some collective ideas to collect the revenues that are outstanding so we can keep the city moving forward. So that'd be the request, that it does go to the CAO's office as was directed by the council, and that once the person is selected, they come to those two committees to explain what they plan to do on this program, and then every quarter give the Audit, Government Efficiency and Budget and Finance Committee an update exactly how much revenue has been collected and what they're doing in that particular endeavor for the revenue manager, which will coordinate hopefully with the Department of Finance. That is my request on item number 12, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. With that request, Mr. Koretz?
Yeah, I don't know if that needs a formal motion to get the quarterly reports. If it does, I'd certainly second it. I think the confusion in committee was that staff reported that this would be located in the mayor's office. I think that was a misinterpretation of the mayor's letter. So I would ask that we approve this as it's written, that it be located in the CAO's office and report to the CAO, and that we ask for those quarterly reports.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Zion?
It does say in the agenda regular report. So regular, we will say every quarter, and once they are established, you come to those two committees, explain their process, and then regular report, we will interpret that as every quarter. That way there's a clear definition on the time they need to report.
Great, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, you're clear with that?
It's good, yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, let's, no other speakers. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
All right, next item.
Mr. President, that takes us to closed session, items 44 and 45.
All right, sergeants, will you secure the John Farrell chambers and thank staff and the public? We're now going into executive session on 2 items. We'll be back following executive session. Thank you very much.
urge you to please come to the Felicia Mayhood Multipurpose Center tomorrow night for the committee meeting of the Senate Select on Air Quality. If you care about the Santa Monica Airport issues in any way, shape, or form, toxicity, noise, safety, please show up and express yourself to this committee. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the public for coming out to the 9th annual tree lighting at Leimert Park, but we also want them to be aware that on December the 8th at our constituent center at 8175 South Vermont, there will be another tree lighting for the community, and also the 9th annual Toy Winter Wonderland will be December the 10th at the Baldwin Hills Shopping Center. Also, I'd like to invite the public to the Christian Center on Saturday, December the 3rd, in which the Neighborhood Housing Service will be hosting a meeting and a conference to advise families about foreclosures, loan modification, and also due to their involvement with NSP funds, they also have a stock of housing to sell to first-time home buyers. And that's at the Crenshaw Christian Center, 7901 South Vermont. Phone number is 888-895-2647 for additional information, and the website is www.lanhs.org.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you. Tomorrow night, 7:30, Tarzana Valley Village Valley Walk. They will be lighting Christmas tree, 18700 Ventura Boulevard in Tarzana at the Valley Walk Christmas tree lighting, 18700 Ventura Boulevard in Tarzana. Thank you.
Thank you. No other announcements. Do we have any adjourning motions? Before we do that, Mr. City Attorney, for an announcement.
Just for clarification, on items 44 and 45, Council gave City Attorney direction on those two items, but no open session announcement was required under the Brown Act.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Attorney. Now we have some adjourning motions. If we all could please rise for adjourning motions. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I'd like to ask that we adjourn today in memory of Eloise Ellie Fisher Bonnet, who died on November 26th. Ellie was the mother of someone who many of us here know, Los Angeles business leader, philanthropist, and gay activist David Bonnet. Ellie was born and raised in Chicago, where she graduated from Northwestern University. While in Chicago, she met her life's love, who was Harry Bonnet. Ellie and Harry were married for 62 years until Harry's death last year at age 85. Ellie and Harry lived in Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Louis, and finally Florida. They were the proud parents of 3 children, Wendy Bonnet Kaplan, Bill Bonnet, and David Bonnet, and the proud grandparents of Patrick Elizabeth Thomas and Mary Claire. Ellie hailed from a hard-charging family and was married to and raised a family of hard chargers. She was the easy, gracious light and spirit of the family. There'll be a celebration of Ellie's life on January 15th in her hometown of Chicago, where she will be buried. May she rest in peace.
Second by Mr. Rosendahl. Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we adjourn in memory of Donnie Eugene Wood, Sr., born in 1949, passed away November 16, 2011. His family relocated to Los Angeles, California from Memphis, Tennessee, and he attended Virginia Road Elementary School, Horace Mann Junior High, and graduated from Manual Arts High School. He played Little League ball and also was a participant in boxing. He was raised in the Christian home and was later joined the First AME Fame Church under the direction of Pastor Hunter. Here he served on the Usher Board number 1 as a faithful member for 8 years. He was the proud father of Megan and also Donnie. He was married in 2003, where he merged his family with Denise Darcel Francis and 2 additional children, Antonio and Whitney. He was an entrepreneur in the city of LA for 30 years. He had a business called Donnie's Famous Footlong Chili Dogs, and he started in 1980. He was a winner of many awards, and his business flourished. He was comfortable in many settings in the community, very compassionate person. And one of the things even with his business, his goal was to feed anyone who was hungry. He was also had enjoyed many of the simple things in life by just enjoying his friends and family in a very relaxed setting. He was survived by his wife, Denise, his children, Megan, Donnie, Jr., Tony, and Whitney, and his mother, Juanita Woods. His funeral services were held November 26th at First AME Church.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Members, I ask we adjourn in memory of Margie Peterson. Margie Peterson is the wife of the late Robert Peterson, who was the head of the Peterson Publishing Empire, which included Hot Rod Magazine and Motor Trend and many magazines in the auto world. Margie also was very involved with philanthropic activities, including of our own Los Angeles County Art Museum, the Boys and Girls Club of Hollywood, and the Peterson Automobile Museum on Wilshire and Fairfax. She's preceded by the death of her husband, Robert, and also tragically preceded by the death of her young sons, Bobby and Richie, in a tragic air crash many, many years ago. I ask we adjourn in memory of Margie Peterson. And finally, I ask that we remember the late, great George Harrison, who left this world 10 years ago today when he died in Los Angeles. George Harrison was a great Beatle who wrote Here Comes the Sun, among many things, and the Sun talked in that song about you have another day and great hope. I always remember George Harrison, late great Beatle. Anything else, members? With that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you very much. The Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work.